on? What is happening? That was shocking to me, at least.
So Imri, so sorry for mispronouncing your name. What did you think about it and some of its impact?
I will jump really quickly before Imri here to say probably he loved it because Imri loves violence.
Embrace the moment.
Yeah, look, I didn't know it happened. I, to be honest with you, couldn't possibly care less what Hollywood people are doing. Yeah. Couldn't possibly care less. I don't care about that. However, so you showing this little video just now was the first time I've seen it. Michele mentioned it yesterday when we were on the phone or something, but I was like, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. So I viewed it the few times that you showed it. My takeaway is, look, first of all, I do teach palm strikes. There's a good place in the world for palm strikes, especially if you're a shooter and you don't want to bust your knuckles. So that's on the positive end. On the negative end, I'm breaking this down mechanically, and he's leaning back as he's slapping. So, I can't.
No, that's how you do a pip slap. There's a particular form that you have to pay attention to. You can't just you're putting the martial arts perspective in terms of the rotation and the pivoting into it. No, a pip slap has to be classically done. You got to lean back and extend
because it's
it.
not, and you're actually it's not supposed to leave a mark more than a half hour. That's the important thing of bitch slapping.
And the most important thing is to slap and say, "Where's my money, bitch?" or Susan. Just slap. Where's my money, Susan? Whack.
Yeah, I just think that if you lean back when you're trying to reach somebody, that's showing you something about your mentality or your psychology at that moment. And that to me is, I'm actually being serious here, studying, how people move during an engagement and that kind of thing. It shows, kind of a fear or a discomfort. I mean, he's not fully committed to it. So I don't know. They may have planned this crap.
No, it was. It is totally.
Yeah, Andrew, it was not. It was not staged. I had a friend working the Vanity Fair red carpet for the party afterwards and doing all the interviews, and we were texting back and forth saying, "Is that for real?" And he says, "Yep."
Yeah.
So
all right.
It was a real scenario.
Sue Larreau, let's bring you in here. Have you on mute and have your point of view here on the bitch slap.
Well, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Working?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. I was kind of taken aback. First things first, is the first time I've ever seen any kind of outtake from the Academy Awards in 10 years. So, I mean, I would have never bothered to even see the Academy Awards if it wasn't for this. So, like many people, I thought it was staged at first. But being half black, I noticed that the bitch slap and everything is kind of out of rhythm and everything. I'm the only ginger, that can actually keep rhythm. And half black, lower half, I know that he slapped like a white man, so that was
he slept on
for Will Smith.
He slept on the 2 instead of 1. You always bounce on the 1. That's where fun is. It's always on the 1, not the 2.
Yeah. Like
white man. That was a white man.
Exactly.
I am completely old school. I remember Rodney Dangerfield and Phyllis Diller and things like that, and the Academy Awards and some of the roasting that they used to do on the Dean Martin show and things like that. It was typical Hollywood to just cut each other down and cut each other's families down and things like that. And it shows you what snowflakes are sitting in that audience right now. It's almost embarrassing to say that they're fellow citizens.
See, the biggest thing, Don Rickles. Don Rickles, like he would have been shot because Don he did it with so much love, but he could tear down anybody. After this show, go look at Don Rickles and you go, "Oh my God, he would not survive today."
So let's get in Rossen. Sorry, your view and tactical view of the bitch slap.
So I will join with Imri about. I am the person that least will care about what Hollywood guys are doing over there, and I truly believe, they are so hungry for attention, and because that Academy rewards are all their kind of activities right now. Their ratings is so much down. So who knows? It can be staged. They are actors anyway. They can make it not look staged, but it was exaggerated for sure. It was exaggerated. Now, the joke, I consider that the joke was not appropriate. When it's a sensitive topic, you're talking about the medical condition of somebody. But at the same time, open marriage and all that stuff, he looks like he's under her thumb, and he laughed at the beginning, right? So then she looked at her, and well, I need to prove it was really exaggerated. In my opinion, it was funny. It means it's childish, like the entire thing, including the joke. I don't think the joke was appropriate as well. I don't think it's funny. I don't think that will drag too much attention. It deserves too much attention. Big deal. It means I don't think it's a big of a deal. Seriously. Since we actually exist like a humankind, and it's good the man to defend his wife or his family. Of course, as we said, it's over exaggerated. I think it was part of it. It acted like it's a show, over the audience and all that stuff. So I don't really care. I don't think that it's so significant that all the media are doing it. There's so much more important actually things that are happening around the world that deserves our attention, and it's just give entertainment to the public. Roman rule.
I actually think it caused the world to have a global eye roll in terms of global audience. Watching these massively overprivileged people sitting there in their multi-millionaire, made money from being nothing more than an actor that seems to be given an awful lot more importance for what they do than what they actually are. It was a very, very privileged, as the Oscars are, it's a pack of super overprivileged, entitled people sitting there big noting themselves. And so
promoting a woke agenda.
I have a question.
Hold on. The real thing. Hold on 1 second. We got just Bruce left to do, and then we're going to open it up. Woke cannot have violence inside it, and that's the biggest thing we got out of this. Now let's bring Bruce in here for the Don MacDonald and his view of the bitch slap, and before we open it up to our conversation here.
Well, I first of all, I think that the slap itself was pretty good form. I could see a little bit of footwork from Ali. Like, believe me, that would hurt, man. He look at the hip rotation, look at the follow through. It was a good slap. I mean, other than that, I really don't have a super strong opinion on this. Of course, it was, wrong for him to do this, and there's nothing really more to be said about it. Yeah.
All right. So if you guys are listening on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, or anywhere else and want to be a part of the conversation that everyone in the panel can see the chat room, then you've got to come here to the Zoom room. Robert's going to put up some information of how to come. There you go. The meeting number, the passcode. All you got to do is get access to Zoom, come in the Zoom room, and that everyone that's a participant in the Zoom can send questions back and forth to our team, to everyone that's in our roundtable. Because there's a lot of people here, we're going to be getting into a lot of subjects. It's going to seem like people may be talking over one another. It's not. This is an open roundtable, and we want to include the audience through the chat. So if you guys are hanging in the YouTube, come on in here to the Zoom, or if you're anyone else, come on in and join. We're going to be going a little bit longer today, so don't worry about it. We will get to some audience call-ins a little later, but now I want to open up the round table. We've introduced everyone. We got a subject matter with the rotational power of force of the bitch slap. Let's take the gloves off. What's wrong with the world, and how can we fix it?
This week?
I was going to handball to you, Melissa, because let's just talk energetics and yeah.
Let's start with causative frequency. Let's start talking about what's actually happening to the planet, which is, of course, affecting all of us. And so I'm going to go, for those that haven't met me before, I specialize in the field of quantum bioenergetics. I'm a healer. I've got a long history of a lot of other things that have brought me to this point. But this week, what I wanted to say was to everyone is, how on earth are you feeling? Because literally, how on earth? So much in terms of frequency and shift has been hitting the planet this week. So we've been seeing there's been a new moon, which is in Aries, and not my specialty, astrology, but also the Schumann resonance has gone off the charts again. There's been massive solar storms that have been hammering the planet as well. There's been all sorts of coronal ejections from the sun, which is, of course, we're terribly dependent on that star that a lot of people seem to forget that we are. And, of course, the human and the human body and all that communicates importantly through the human body runs under electromagnetic frequency. So as much as the frequency of the planet is hit by this stuff, so are we. And so this past week, particularly the last 8-9 days, we've seen enormous bad decisions and people following through on those bad decisions. We can talk the Will Smith thing. I don't want to, because I don't want to give him any more attention. But the bottom line is he was sitting there chuckling. He made a decision and he had to consciously step up those stairs, walk along that stage. At any point, he could have pulled himself out or made a different decision on how he handled it. And I think last minute he changed his mind. The way that he actually slapped Chris Rock, I don't think that was his original plan. I think he was going in for a punch, but he was, as he got there, he realized what he was doing. But we're seeing that across the board. You're seeing that in the situation in Ukraine. You're seeing it in situations in government. We're seeing a lot of bad decisions being made across the world in this past week under these enormous effective electromagnetic shifts. So I'm going to let it go there and see what other people want to jump in with. I mean, we were talking a little earlier prior to this. Yeah, Will Smith will pay for it the rest of his so-called career. But it's okay. I think he'll struggle by on his multi-millions anyway. He'll make it through winter. But,
yes, winter will not affect him. All right. So the ball is in the round table court. Who is going to step up to the service line?
I guess I will. I understand what Melissa just said. There's electromagnetic shifts. There's also some sort of insanity spreading, like, COVID, right? There's insanity spreading everywhere. And it's not spreading in a good way. So you have people who are normal or were normal before, and they just lost their goddamn minds, right?
Like three MMA people in the last month and a half have lost their minds.
What the hell, man? Right, this man attacked an entire hotel lobby.
Hold on, you got to give the thing. Who is Chael Sonnen? Former MMA champ, known as the grandfather of MMA. High level MMA fighter. Correct. And he loses it in a hotel room and attacks about 25 people, choke slams, knockouts. And it took like 19 people to subdue him inside a hotel at the Mandalay Bay in Vegas. And he originally had 15 felony counts that have now been reduced to 5 misdemeanors.
How does that happen? You see, now that's funny. That is for the comedy show. This man has attacked numerous people. Can you imagine going out to do your shopping? You come back home, you got your little key card, you're going to go into your hotel room and lie down, and some crazy jacked up MMA guy breaks you up. Like, seriously? And then,
as a background, it was at a hotel. All the hotel rooms are right there, and in that hallway, he just went from one end to the other, beating everyone up.
As I said to Andrew, can you imagine being the guy at the end of the hall, seeing this guy to these people? Can you imagine being the guy at the end of the hall? So when I came into the breakout room, we have a gun expert inside here, right? I want to go back to Melissa's point. Like, some people are changing for the better, some people are changing for the worse. Yeah. Like, for instance, how does an Australian female sniper become a quantum healer? You see? you see these things? Like, how does an Australian female sniper become a quantum healer? Right? Some people change for the better, some people start slapping people on stage. Right, but this guy, Chael, that we're talking about here, this man beat down a whole hallway, right? And they had to subdue him, and his excuse is that I was on Ambien. My man stopped taking Ambien. like, I don't know, meditate or something, right? So we have people that are going crazy, and it's like spreading across the planet. And I'm not quite sure what it is. I think that from a psychological perspective, I'm going to give you the psychology of what's happening here. Now, there was this guy that they canceled recently. This doctor was talking about mass formation psychosis. I think the effects of what has happened in the last 2 years are going to have long-lasting effects. People have lost their goddamn minds. It's spreading. Yeah. And I don't think we're going to recover very, very soon for the next like 10 years or so. Okay, because people are isolated with their thoughts, and that is like hell for people. You want to know what hell is? Put people in touch with their thoughts, and you'll understand, and they understand what hell is. And when they've been through that hell, like you lock them up, when they come out, it's like you know what that's like. It's like letting the bees out of the hive, right? They're gonna find and bite anything that's around there. So I think that's really part of what's going on, but I absolutely defer to Melissa because she's trained, and I'm afraid. So
I'm actually more scared. Right. I'm more scared if a quantum healer becomes an Australian marksman, like a sniper. If it was the other way around, that would be more scary. Like, wait, you were healing? Like, no, I feel it being, yeah.
Well, there's the common joke that Monty brings up that if I ever run out of clientele, I can always sit up a tree and pick a few more off. And so,
we got to get the red mist, and then
so
I'll heal them.
Let's bring in some of the tactical guys. Let's bring in some of the tactical guys here, and let's talk about MMA guy going crazy. What would you do if you were at the end of the hall?
So I'll jump in. I was ready for that question. I don't know what I'd do. I'll leave that for not on the show, but I've got to with a couple of MMA guys. I thought the conversation would have gone this way, I would have sent you a little footage of Chuck Liddell kicking me in the leg over and over, which was cute. But that's us buddies. It wasn't, a fight. What I do want to say is a little bit more on the serious end is, I know that when I left the military, I had some issues. And I didn't have anger issues in the sense of, I'm walking around, beating the crap out of people. Never done that kind of senseless anything. But I do know that when you live your life fighting, and MMA, man, that's combat. That's combat. So when you live your life fighting, there's a switch that happens, right? It's different from how a lot of other people live their lives. And in the military, especially in high-level units, one of the most important skills is being able to go from 0 to hero in 0.2 seconds and back down to 0 as fast as it happened to begin with. And that switch of intensity from 0 to 10,000, back to 0, back to 10,000 immediately, that has an effect on you. And some people can't deal with it. I was going to say as a joke before, the moral of the story is don't do drugs, right? And I don't know the first thing about this guy. I had no idea about the Ambien and stuff, but the quote from what is it? One of the Adam Sandler movies, came up with a football player. Oh, moral of the story, kids, is don't do drugs. That's what it seems like to me because he flipped his lid. But we also don't have context, right? What happened before? When did he stop doing roids or whatever? No,
it's starting to come. He's been off of roids and retired for years and years and years. He's an announcer now for Bellator and has his own big podcast and stuff. The thing is, he's never had a history of outside violence, never been arrested, no DUIs, wasn't a partier, and it was his first time taking Ambien.
Well, see, when you do drugs, people do it around people that you feel
under
safe
prescription.
With.
Under prescription.
Go out to nature, get a nice fire going. You don't go to Vegas with all the flashy lights.
What is it about the Mandalay Bay? It's got such a bad history for violence happening in it. What have they done lighting there or something?
Well, it's what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. They don't want you to know.
Not anymore. Everything's recorded. And actually, going quickly back to Will Smith, how much money does the US government pay for military and security? And yet he was able to wander up.
Yeah,
where was security? I'm like,
stunned like everyone else.
Fresh Prince to do what?
No, they
Imri,
thought. I'm
has,
quite sure they thought it was part of the act. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah.
They probably thought it was part of the act. So the security is like, you're right. Every one of those security personnel should be fired immediately.
Yeah.
Because when they asked him to leave and he didn't. So why is he still in one piece?
Yeah, and then was given an award. He cried and got a standing ovation. Did you see Jim Carrey's response to the whole thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we know what Jim Carrey's been like for the last couple of years. He's a bit, but he made perfect sense. This is how insane the world is. Is like, hang on, Jim Carrey is making a good point, and it's coherent, and I agree with him. The world's gone insane.
Right. So now that we brought up some of these other subjects here, because we are an open roundtable, anyone can bring up anything at all. So I want to switch the subject: the silence of the American truckers, or silence by the media. And how is this going to begin to affect the media that's going on now that Ukraine's a month old and the media's gored themselves on view count and got some money back, and CNN lost its Plus service, which is going to fail miserably. So what about the American Freedom Truckers? Yeah, and Freedom Trucker guys.
Well, so what happened to that? Because they were like, we were told there was convoys heading towards Washington, and then you brought it up, and there's like a month between.
Well, it's still going on. It's just suppressed in our news.
So I want to jump really quickly over there because that's kind of related to the previous topic a little bit. And just a question: is there actually a media that it's real news right now anymore?
Sort of news stations like Universal Citizen News or Rebel News or any of the other rare independents out there.
Very few independent, and it's not definitely you cannot expect from the mainstream media to see that. Actually they show their face, their real face is just a huge propaganda machine. So whatever you listen actually of the mainstream media, just believe to the totally opposite right now. They totally lost credibility, in my opinion, in general.
Yeah.
When every is so much, everybody talking about violence and all that stuff. And everybody's frustrated about the violence. Well, what actually the TV actually promotes all the time, what the computer games actually promote all the time, it promotes pure violence. So what else we can expect from like a social behavior in general in a humankind when that's promoted in any any bit of our kind of a social existence there? We cannot expect anything else. It's programmed in our subconscious. It's existing in general, but people just it's violence is bad. I don't hear these people talking about the new movies. I don't hear that people talking about the computer games that literally indoctrinate the kids from a very young age. The computer games they get bloodier and bloodier. Do you think that do not have an effect forming a young character? Of course it does. It's called social engineering. That's what it is. So we cannot, wondering what's happening. It's just part of a process, in my opinion. That's just my humble opinion, of course.
You get desensitized to it. Like a 6-year-old sees 3 murders on television, or you got the video games, and the innocence from children gets removed because they've seen all this violence and everything else like that. Then you got the slap, which what's going to happen now? Like, do comedians need to have a barricade like a band so no one can actually get on stage? And quickly going back to answer Andrew's question about the truckers, it's not in the mainstream media. I haven't seen it in the alternative media, and it's not on social media. It's not anywhere. Like there would be a video of like, look, there's fucking 18 trucks driving by. There's nothing at all anywhere.
Monty, they took from the Canadian playbook. Okay.
Yeah.
And so what happened in Canada is that my friends who are lawyers, the Canadian government is facing several lawsuits, okay, because you arrested people at an event that was deemed legal. And so they're facing quite a few lawsuits, and the police collaborated and the media collaborated and shut down those truckers, right? And it was a very sad thing to see, because some of these guys, they come from around here and so on. And I can tell you that these guys, they're not violent guys. Like the last person you need to be afraid of is the guy who brings you the stuff to Costco and the guy who brings you the stuff at Walmart, right? These guys are not violent and they're not whatever, but Trudeau, and you see, I'm a hypnotherapist as well as a psychotherapist. And what was happening was that if you keep repeating something over and over again, they are terrorists, they are bad people and so on. And an authority figure does that. The people at the bottom, they just, like, the minds become softened because of it, okay? And so it was mass brainwashing. And the thing about it is when the media portrayed it to other people, like the global news and so on, people who were outside, they thought that these guys were bad guys. Come on, you have inflatable playhouses and you're calling these guys bad guys? I can't believe the cops, though. This is something that was unprecedented. I can't believe the Canadian police actually participated. There's something that says that you're doing your job. You can do your job up until a point, okay? Now, any armed service, I don't care whether it's military, paramilitary, or even just a police force. If you're armed and stuff like that, you should never turn violence against citizens. You should never turn the violence against your own citizens. That should be a staple.
Hold on, folks. They'll be back in the room in a moment.
Is this a toilet break? You're muted, Andrew. We're all muted.
All right, Robert, did everyone come back from the emergency breakout room that something created out of nowhere?
That was my mouse did that. Let's see. We got.
Do we need to exercise your mouth? Is your mouse haunted?
5, 6.
I thought Zoom had instilled a panic room.
The power of Zoom compels your mouse to stop.
I, in this ever-present moment of the now, take all power back in my hand of this mouse.
Exactly. That mouse has no power over you. It's your bitch slap that mouse.
David, continue.
Are we back?
Yes, we're back.
There we are.
Okay, so I am going to defer to the people who are tactical and military trained here. I don't know if it's different for different militaries, but y'all know that you can't be turning violence against your own citizens unless there is an emergency and the citizens are actually violent or causing a disruption in government. Am I wrong here?
Well, posse comitatus.
Imri, because Imri's worked with one of the best armies in the world. So they're amazing soldiers, amazing people, and it's also for a defence force or for a military force. The army that Imri's trained with has actually got some of the highest honour and integrity around the world. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to hand it to him because he's probably got a better person to talk about this.
Well, thanks, Melissa. I appreciate the kind words, and you know, I kind of don't disagree. Not trying to be, you know, head up here or anything, but you know, our situation back home in Israel is such that the military not only has the job of defending our nation in the sense of against foreign militaries, but we have a lot of problems that go on at home, you know, whether it's in the Palestinian territories or whatever. The army itself, you know, doesn't really work inside of Israel, except the fact that, you know, we all, you know, when you go home on leave or whatever on weekends, I mean, you have your rifle and your pistol with you because terror strikes randomly in Israel, right? Look at this week, right? We've had 5 attacks in the last 10 days. And, you know, it's been a really crappy little wave there. Yeah, the military is, you know, is not to be turned against its own people. The military is there to defend its people, but really, if you're looking at it realistically, globally speaking, the military is there to enforce the politics of that government. but not, not locally, hopefully, right? Not domestically. But it's really tricky when you do have to, and look, I wasn't a cop. I worked with a lot of law enforcement. I trained law enforcement. I worked alongside of law enforcement here in the States, but I was never a cop. So, I can't speak as a cop who has to work and deal with crime inside of our cities every day. But in a military context, working, especially in the Palestinian territories, for example, where, the majority of the population there doesn't want anything to do with the terrorists who we're going out there to hunt. And so you have to tread very, very lightly. I'm trying to kind of connect it back to here, even though, I think, David, what you were saying in terms of military, the military is not really being used on its civilians right now in terms of Canada and the United States.
Except for the National Guard inside the Washington, D.C.
Yeah, but that's different, right? Because the military there is not being activated, physically actively against people. They're being brought in to guard an area. Now, ethically, I'm not saying that was a good call. I'm not saying it was the right thing to do, but they're not committing violence against our own citizens, right? When police officers, like we saw there in Canada, trampling people with their horses, that are truly quietly, not quietly, but calmly, peacefully demonstrating. Yeah, that's some messed up shit that 5 years ago, if you would have said, hey, this happened in Canada, you'd be like, dude, you're insane. Pick any other country in the world.
Yeah.
That might.
Well, the thing about DC is that they wanted people to turn up, and that's why the National Guard were there, because they believed that January 6th will happen all again, because everyone's a white supremacist and they'll start taking over the country, and there'll be mass rioting and everything else like that. Unfortunately, it's the right, and they don't do these things. It's usually the left that burns everything down. And it's strange though, 35,000. What was the number of National Guard around the capital for the most popular president in history? 81 million votes. Like, it doesn't make sense. If you think you're beloved by the people, why are you hiding behind tens of thousands of troops with an 8-foot wall or fence?
Because the love of the people. I want to jump here because several days before we had that chat with Seaux Larreau, and he had a very, very constructive thought. It's just right on point about law enforcement and what actually they need its duty to enforce. So, Seaux.
I had the opportunity to go to Baltimore just a little over 2 weeks ago. I was in Baltimore. I saw where the Freedom Convoy is at. If you know anything about the DC belt, the Washington DC, and what they call the inner beltway and outer beltway, it's 395, 495, 695 goes all the way over by Dulles and Baltimore and everything like that. That's where the Freedom Convoy is at. Unfortunately, no 18-wheelers, from what little bit I saw, no 18-wheelers are allowed to go into the inner beltway. Everything's being downloaded right now, and it's all the trailers are being downloaded, and smaller trucks or delivery pickup trucks, the size of pickup trucks, are taking stuff into Washington, D.C. From what little bit I did see. What I was astonished at was that, and everybody will agree with me, there's nothing on social media, there's nothing on the local channels, there's nothing on Fox News about this. And even some of the newer networks are not reporting it. And I think what's happened over the last couple of years with this COVID pandemic, and we've got people from Australia here, we've got people from Europe, it's a global thing. And looking back on my life, 2.5 years in Baghdad, I feel like a useful idiot now, because our government has become very capable and very professional about suppressing any kind of bad media. That I saw it in Baghdad all the time, other than some flash drives getting Baghdad to Al Jazeera. the U.S. Army and the media were very good at suppressing all the stuff that was going on in Baghdad. And I see the same thing in Washington, D.C., and this kind of goes all the way back to the Will Smith thing, where what we saw on January 6th was a bunch of American citizens going into the building that belongs to them, right? And Congress acting like they were being overrun. And I didn't see anybody armed or anything like that. And unfortunately, a young girl who was pushed into the door by an Antifa activist, and she was shot, and that's what everybody remembers. And that is basically the right-wing bitch slap like Will Smith did. And everybody thinks that was so violent, when you can turn on the news on what happened on 23 cities the year before, and people were getting their heads kicked in, and people with wrist rockets and BB guns and things like that, and actual shootings going on. So the one good thing that did come out of all this, I think, was we saw the UN's finally getting together, and NATO got together, did the NATO summit over there in Poland, and I was very proud of that woman from from the parliament from Germany. She actually stood up and told Trudeau in no certain terms that he was a dictator. He was a dictator. I was very proud of her, and I wish more people would stand up like that, not only inside of our Congress, but normal citizens. You need to stand up at school board meetings. You need to stand up, at the ballot box. You need to stand up at any public forum you can get and just say, "Hey, this isn't right."
Yeah, the Hungarian ambassador roasted Trudeau also.
Yeah. Yes, and the room was very empty except for those who actually stood up against Trudeau. It was so awesome. It was almost comedic, because Castro Jr. going around like, "Oh, look at me and awesome," and the Europeans are going, "Fuck off, get out, we don't like you." But as you said, you stand up in school meetings. That is true, but if you notice in the last 2-3 months, they tried that, and the federal government called them domestic terrorists. That's getting back to that insanity motif that we're talking about, because people were talking about the sexual stuff that they're teaching kids about sex. They're fucking 8, but people were reading out the syllabus or the curriculum, and they were thrown out because they were being offensive. And it's like, well, they're just reading the book that they released. It's just clown world on crack. That's what we're at.
So I want to interject here one thing with what's going on with the convo. Clearly, the FBI and the CIA are suppressing information at all levels here. You don't need to be rocket science or military people to see it. Not even the minor stream news medias are covering this stuff. Whenever Trudeau came on and kicked the shit out of the liberals and did what he did over there, it was something they didn't want during the Ukraine story. And the Ukraine story hasn't played out yet. And as the Ukraine story plays out, we're going to see a market meltdown. It's inevitable. Putin is demanding that they pay for gas in rubles. What is that effect going to be on the rest of the world if you start paying for gas in rubles or gold?
Quick question.
That's part of this week too, though. Other nations are stepping in economically now. Just in these past probably 7 to 10 days, even Australia has suddenly announced we're sending APCs over, we're sending armoured personnel carriers, various things over to Ukraine from Australia. There's an economic decision that makes no sense. But we're about as far away from it as you can get. I mean, just the travel costs alone. But it's
Pluto's closer.
But it's but yeah, we're seeing, you're absolutely spot on, Andrew. We're now actually seeing what any war's about, which is always about money. It's always about economy. It's always been driven, every war since Napoleon's been owned and driven by the Rothschild family, and too easy to find out. And so it's and this one is very much similar to that. The actual on the ground in the Ukraine, I'm going to let other people speak more knowledgeably about it, but even this last week, what's happening on the ground in the Ukraine is it's kind of devastatingly comical. it's just this massive comedy of errors happening where people are dying horrible deaths. People are, we're seeing the people on the ground paying the price for utter ineptitude, not to mention poor forward planning on Putin's part. But and still yet globally, the rest of the world's still trying to convince us. It's a bit like the whole COVID thing. There's still this, no, you should still be afraid, even though a virus only evolves to become weaker and has. It's similar to that at the moment, where they're trying, the rest of the world and the governments are saying, we're pouring money into this now. Just this week, I don't know, I always have I'm just burned by the last 5 years on this planet where I'm immediately suspicious. So,
well, I've got a quick question. I saw a headline saying that Russia is going to tie its ruble to gold. Did that happen? Is that true? Is anyone else seeing?
Yes, but it hasn't happened yet. So they set up the system to pay in rubles first, and it appears India may pay in gold bullion.
That's a serious problem for the rest of the world.
It is.
That is a serious problem.
And if you look, the ruble,
why are we acting like Russia can't be self-sufficient if it wanted to? What are these sanctions about? Like McDonald's pulling out of Russia? But seriously, are we having this kind of conversation? You're gonna pull McDonald's out of Russia.
Yeah,
you're gonna hurt them that badly, right? Because
Pornhub. David, it's just going to turn into a utopia. It's basically all the social engineering and all the shit gets out of it. And I think so. If the ruble is attached to gold, does that mean the ruble's the only real money on the planet at this point in time because it's backed by something?
No, it's not backed by anything yet. They haven't actually done it.
Yeah, but so when they do,
the thing to understand is the ruble recovered everything it lost already today, and the majority of the Russian stocks have recovered. That tells you the sanctions aren't working.
Yeah,
it's not working because the country can be self-sufficient if it wanted to. And so what is going to happen? Let's face it, we're a lot of these countries, we're Russia's bitches. We are, okay? Because they have oil, they have gas, and their only reason, there's something tactical about war here and strategic as well, because he locked out Crimea and he's going to lock out the rest of that basin so that the oil supply is going to be controlled a lot by Russia. So you can make as much noise as you want. You know what else depends on oil? Electricity, not just transportation.
Mm-hmm. Sue, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, this was a huge warning clear back when I was going through the Green Beret school. I didn't like many kids in high school, I didn't really get into the depth and detail in civics class of the Constitution. Once I came back to the Army after a little stint in the French Foreign Legion, I realized that socialism, when I was in France, left a real bad taste in my mouth. So when I re-enlisted in the American Army, I got really big into the Constitution. And Russia is making a very strategic move. If you read the Constitution of the United States, Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution states that no state shall enter into any treaty, alliance, confederation, grant letters of marque or reprisals, coin money, emit bills of credit, or make anything but silver and gold and silver coin a tender of payment of debts. Richard Nixon took us off that standard with an executive order in 1972. Ever since then, everybody wants to kick the can down the road on a continuing resolution, raising the debt ceiling, and we're now $32 trillion into debt, right? And there's nothing that backs that up. Nothing. Who's gonna, when they call that debt due? I don't think we can sustain it. I think that's the agreement that, and this is me just being a conspiracy theorist, but when Putin went over there and went to the Winter Olympics and was real chummy with the president of China, I think this is all their plan. They're going to call that debt due, and we're going to be $32 trillion in debt. Hell, our Congress is even talking about going to a cryptocurrency, but it's not going to help because we don't have anything backing up our currency. And if the Russians go to a gold standard and the Chinese are behind them, once they do that, we just lost our status as a superpower in the United States. And I don't see any chance of us ever recovering from it. And I agree with Andrew that we're looking at economic collapse, and there's no way of coming back.
And more than likely,
or paper, anything like that. I went to Russia right after the wall came down in Berlin, and I was actually in Leningrad when it changed the name back to St. Petersburg. You went into the bathroom, the toilet there, or the water closet they call it, and there wasn't a toilet in there. You just kind of leaned over a hole and everything, but in a basket right next to there was the Soviet Union Russian ruble. That was your toilet paper. It was worthless. I think we're going to see the same thing coming to the dollar if these guys head towards a gold standard, either Russia or China. And we're going to be in big trouble. The rest of the world's going to be in big trouble.
If China goes off a gold standard, it will have a major issue with its accounting errors, because the accounting errors in China are far more serious than the on-purpose accounting errors in our big banks here. And the same thing with Europe. So there's a sticky road when it comes to gold backing a fiat currency that's been a fiat currency for how long? So there has to be a decoupling from fiat currency into a metals basket other than just gold, because we already know gold is heavily manipulated by who? The British Stock Exchange, because it's the British Stock Exchange who pegs the prices for gold and all heavy metals, all rare earth heavy metals that are out there.
And Andrew, you have to take into consideration that on the Chinese front, the quad that is being set up between the US and Australia, actually, for those of you who don't know, there's another problem brewing. China is fighting a four countries convention, right? They're trying to protect that Asiatic basin. And so they're going to push China in the direction of Russia. And if these two cooperate, that's a bad problem. That's a real problem. That is the end of U.S. hegemony in the world. That's the end of it. Yeah. And we all know it economically and militarily as well, right? Based on manpower, you're never going to beat the Chinese military, okay? If it's a man-to-man thing, right? You got to use technology, but then, once you get into these kinds of situations and people think this is about war, this is not about war. No, this is not about war. This is a chess game, okay? And in the end, the chess game is who holds the balance of power. Now, traditionally speaking, in the UN, whenever decisions are going to be made and it falls out of favor of Russia, China usually vetoes and vice versa. So they have been cooperating. But the fact that Putin is actually courting the Chinese leader means that's a bad thing for everybody. Right, which is why Biden is trying to meet with China to try to get them away from that kind of thing. But they have the other issues, because China is now pressing their claims on the Asiatic basin and Taiwan, and they have their issues as well. These are the kinds of things that it's very connected, but everybody's pushing their agenda, and at the end of it, everybody suffers. Right. So economic collapse is imminent.
I want to add one thing about the Chinese military. The failures we're seeing in the Russian military, their inability to create logistics, the maintenance of their things, and the corruption at the generals to the brigade level is so serious. You have virtually incompetent fighters and conscripts. The Chinese Army, Air Force, and Navy is no different. What is the last war that gave them veteran people who have veteran tactics? None.
I think debate. Andrew, I think everybody's missing the point. What is the basis of war, right?
Money.
Exactly. It's the transfer of wealth from one society or one culture to another by violent means. And if you go all the way back to Sun Tzu or some of what we study in the Green Berets is an insurgency, if you can do that without violence, if you can do that through economic collapse, and Lord knows I've seen several of them, and I, Melissa and I both went to Somalia, and Somalia is a great example where there's no currency can buy you anything in Somalia. And when you have an economic collapse for 10 years, people don't get educated. They got pictures on the walls of where this is a grocery store, this is a hospital, it's murals on the wall, and the entire society collapses, right? Because anything that would back up or be used as tender for the exchange of goods is worthless in Somalia. And I've seen the same thing in Turkey. I remember early 90s in Turkey trying to exchange $100, and they gave me something the size of a backpack to go around and spend money with, because the Turkish lira was so worthless compared to the dollar. And when we lose, and it's all based off of oil. You remember the price of a barrel of oil is done on the international market in the dollar. Once we lose that, we're in big trouble.
The petrodollar is a mystical spell attached to the fiat dollar. It's what tries to peg all world economies to follow in the footstep of the petro investment dollar. Now, that petro investment dollar has never been audited by the Fed, and I believe it was Ron Paul that wanted to audit the Fed. Mm-hmm. And this is another thing that should have been done 100 years ago. They should have audited the Fed every year, but the Fed has never been audited. In a constitutional republic, how can there even be a Fed that isn't a legal arm and yet still operates as one?
That's a very essential question to be asked, right?
Right.
So
why is it there? We know it's there for corruption and creation of the petrodollar, but we have no power as a voting republic to even demand it out of our Congress and senators, because they won't do it.
So look, I think maybe we want to look at this from another angle, turn it around 180 degrees. For me, it's pretty easy to answer what Putin is doing. He's trying to prevent sophisticated military equipment from landing on his borders. It's pretty transparent to me what Xi Jinping is doing. He's trying to rise up and have the Chinese people take their proper place in the world after literally millennia of isolationism. I think the real question this roundtable should tackle is, what the fuck are we doing? What is this liberal elite in the West doing? Where are they taking us? I understood what Trump was doing. Agree or disagree with him. He's very transparent. He was a nationalist. He didn't sign the Trans-Pacific Partnership. He didn't sign the Paris Accord. He started to domestically produce energy. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying I support Trump. What I'm saying is you can see what he's doing. Now ask yourself, what in the fuck is Macron, Trudeau, and Biden doing? What are they doing? Because all I see is they're trying to destroy their own countries. We have the worst forest fires ever on the West Coast over the last 5 or 6 years, all the way from Southern California right up into the BC interior. They couldn't save homes. They couldn't save villages. No provincial support came in Canada, no federal support. And yet, if you watch, these same governments are constantly announcing multi-million and billion-dollar aid packages for other countries. So the question is, what are we doing? Where are these liberal elites taking us? I'm not sure I know the answer, but I do know it's a great question.
Bruce,
by we?
Bruce, you say that like they think or something. Is that what you're thinking? You think that there's some plan?
There is a plan. It's not for us, though.
If it's not a plan, I would say the only answer I'll give off the top of my head is it seems as though they're possessed by a spirit of self-loathing for being Americans, Canadians, and French. And they're our worst enemies now. They're trying to take our societies apart. I'll leave the Great Reset out of it and the World Economic Forum, which just had their big summit, by the way, in Abu Dhabi. And, forget about them. But I mean,
I think that that's a very, very, very significant actually connection with all that stuff without opening that topic. But I think that's connected.
Yeah.
Also, the Council on Foreign Relations dictates a lot of situations. The neocons formed as a resistance to some of the factions inside the Council of Foreign Relations. And I never thought I would see a neocon and a liberal left wing join together. Yet we have seen it. And what does that spell? Liberal neocons? What is this? The First Order of Star Wars?
Yeah. Yeah. It's perplexing.
Anything.
Is it the founding of the American Empire? And it's, we don't know, no more Darth Cheney. Is it, is it gonna be,
Yeah, more or less they're pushing.
Adult lives in the military.
More or less they're pushing for it.
I'm sure Rossen saw the same thing in Bulgaria before their collapse, and even after they did their reset from communism. And I know that I know Imri and I have saw the same thing in Israel, and compared to the United States, the military and the law enforcement, and we're all kind of brainwashed in our own way of being patriots and standing up for the Constitution and things like that. But when you all, at the end of the day, the establishment is going to take care of the establishment. Period.
Mhm.
Period. The rest of us are, and we heard it during the whole COVID thing. We are unessential. We're supposed to stay home, right? Mm-hmm. Where the establishment keeps on getting paid and they keep moving forward, the rest of us are expected to stay home and be basically under house arrest. And that was, to me, that was just a dry run of worse things to happen. Australia was the one that surprised me. I mean, I couldn't believe what they were, we talk about the people in January 6th being accused of terrorism. I heard some people leaving, just teenagers leaving little camps in Australia and being hunted down. The law enforcement hunted them down like they were, a mass murder or something.
Yeah.
Typhoid Mary type stuff. Yeah. It was being here in Victoria, where we still have vaccine mandates. I think we're the only they call it jurisdiction. Isn't that telling? The only jurisdiction that has the vaccine mandates. It's like, yeah, even New Zealand's getting rid of them. I think it's this weekend, actually. And it's like, okay, but I can't go to a pub or go see a venue because I haven't got a vaccine, which is not a vaccine that doesn't work because everyone else still gets it. And to quickly answer Bruce's question, what I'm doing, I'm making fun of it. I'm like the band on the Titanic. I'm doing what I love as everything collapses.
That's right. No, you're right, Sue. In Melbourne, the police here, I think the police in Victoria and Australia were the first to absolutely go off the rails. And no longer did you feel safe saying to your kids, if you're in trouble, look for a policeman. It was more, kids, if you see a cop, run. That's what it's become in Victoria. The police came out in full riot gear to peaceful protest and started firing rubber bullets into people's foreheads. And it was just, and that
without
was kind
warning.
of before it's happened anywhere else, Canada or anywhere else.
This is what I was saying earlier. You can't look. If you are part of law enforcement and you are being ordered to brutalize people, you must do your job. I understand that. But at what point in time, like what happened with the Canadians trampling people with horses? What are we talking about here? Like, if you saw this stuff, right? Like Canada has gone back to third world status. How are you dealing with people like this? And for that matter, just so that we're clear, whether you agree with Trudeau or don't agree with Trudeau and so on, this man was asked to speak to the opposition. You're a politician. You're supposed to stand up and say, okay, I'm going to speak, be the bigger person and take the higher road, because you're supposed to provide an example. You don't dismiss people who disagree with you as terrorists and refuse to speak to them. These are your own people. This is not a foreign power invading you. Hello, right? You're refusing to speak to people? What is that about?
And everything in the name of
quickly,
democracy.
before we go any further, everyone, I'm afraid I'm going to have to go. It was always predetermined that I was going to have to leave the show early today. I want to say thank you to everyone. I want to say thank you to the chat room, because the chat room has been keeping the comedy alive. I'm sorry when people talk about serious things that I've had the giggles, but the chat room's been awesome. So I love you guys. If you need to find me, melissahockinghughes.com, you can always find me. This is an amazing conversation. So let's go back to that, because absolutely what's happening in so-called law enforcement, I mean, we could dive down, that's so big. Please do follow up on how wrong that's going. And thank you to this audience, because I tell you, you guys give hope to the human race. Maybe this should become the new media.
That is our intention, new media. All right, Melissa, take it easy and have a great day. Have a good sessions. Yeah.
If I could just...
Hold on. Let Rossen finish what he was going to say.
Yeah, it's all that with the pandemic and everything, all the weirdness that we actually witness all around the world. It's kind of raises the big question: is that understanding of the modern democracy, because it was proclaimed that it was the name of democracy? If that's the face of the modern democracy, thanks, no thanks, because I know exactly what that looks like. I have some experience from the past, and I see the same patterns over there. If that's the democracy, we just saying it in the wrong name.
Yeah, it's mob rule, basically. That's what I like about the Constitution, where it's supposed to be, if anything you put in a law, it doesn't affect one person the wrong way, then it's unconstitutional. But is it Thomas Jefferson? Democracy is two wolves and a sheep discussing what's for lunch. And it's just mob rule. And like here in Victoria, there are people like, yes, the police are doing their jobs, but they went a bit too far. It's like, well, that's very close to I'm just following orders. Now, the justification, their justification, not mine, is the police are like, well, I have to earn money because I've got a family and I've got to put food on the table. And there's slight irony because they're attacking protesters who don't have money to put food on the table. And it's such a clusterfuck.
Can I raise my question? The Nazi soldiers followed orders. Yeah. They just follow orders. So is that justify the action? This is where we suppose every single individual is supposed to have the ability of critical thinking. What's moral and what's not? It's the value system. I think that's beyond any kind of government or law. It's the moral law. That's what's supposed to govern us.
Yeah. And the moral minority is trying to run us through mob rule. Or the amoral minority, however you want to twist the semantics of the minority with a mob voice.
Andrew, I want to say something here. I was 7 years old when I was tear gassed for the first time. Okay? That was back down in the Caribbean, when the US had this Cuba. Okay, when they were fighting over who was going to control this thing. Let me explain to you what that has done in terms of my mind when it comes to police and law enforcement. Basically, the teachers in the country were not being paid, so they decided to hold a protest. It was a peaceful protest. The police blocked off both sides, both exits of a boulevard, and tear gassed the middle. So I have seen these kinds of things, right? And I am saying to you that there is something, what I saw in Canada in terms of how the police were acting to these people. As an example, Canadians have this, the cliche Canadian thing is that you bump into a Canadian, the Canadian says sorry, right? They're extremely polite to a fault, okay? What it is that they are claiming, we want to be peaceful, and you approach them like that and you refuse to talk. you're not only tarnishing necessarily your reputation, you're tarnishing the reputation of the entire country. And so that's why a lot of Canadians are actually really upset with this man. But forget about this aspect here. When you're talking about how law enforcement is supposed to operate in that particular situation, you have a job to do. You use the force that is necessary to get your job done, right? Going over and above that standard means that you are actually at fault for whatever happens. And obviously, law enforcement in Canada and North America has protections. I understand this concept. It is necessary for them to do their job. But the force that is being used, everybody's going crazy, even law enforcement. Andrew, you can see that, right?
Now, the biggest question is, what is their job? Define their job.
Their job is supposed to be to maintain law and order, to serve and protect the community.
The community, not the group of politicians.
Right?
Not the group of politicians.
Correct. Exactly.
And if these politicians do not care,
something has changed there.
If the politicians don't care about the community, then who you're supposed to support at that point? And speaking of which, that you're being tear gassed because, it's supposed to be a comedy show still. Yeah. Imri actually do that for fun. He liked to be tear gassed. He love it. He love it. He do it for breakfast.
It's a hobby. He gets off the streets.
Imri's hobby.
Tear gas is not fun. It's never fun.
Rossen knows some of my stories from the military of tear gassing myself and my team unintentionally. So because
you mentioned that it's intentionally. I know that you do it totally.
We want to hear that story
Intentionally.
We want to hear that.
Well, combat can be hilarious, man. It can be really funny. But yeah, he's also referring to a lot of the jackassery that we do with the on our YouTube channel with the intention of actually teaching people, what can happen, what can you do, what can you get over. So I think he's really talking about. We did some stuff on, somehow I ended up being like the Steve-O of our little group because, they're like, hey, we got to try this taser out. What are we gonna? All right, okay,
Hey, just don't agree to demonstrate techniques that the suicide bombers do, please.
I couldn't ever.
Please. Well, no, be fair. You can do it once.
I love you, man. I love you. So don't try to don't agree to do that demonstration.
I promise, brother. I promise. Look, what I was going to say, I'm sorry to kind of turn this serious again, but I really wanted to put in, with what we were talking about with like the law enforcement, going against its own people in a very unethical, disgusting, violent ways, which has happened, plenty of times in the past, less so in America and Canada, right? But it certainly happens here. We have a thing that we're taught in the Israeli military in basic training, which is, I can't directly translate it because it doesn't really work, but the bottom line is if your commander commands you to do something that in our sense here would be unconstitutional or illegal, and we have verbiage to describe the exact level of how bad that decision is or how unethical that decision is, right? Because ethics do not necessarily follow laws, or vice versa, rather. Laws do not necessarily follow human ethics and morals. You are allowed to disobey that order, right? And I'm not aware of any cases of that having happened, certainly in my period in the military, but I think that's a discussion that we need to have with our law enforcement in the world. And look, man, if you're ordered to go in and trample people, I'm not saying they were ordered there in Canada because I don't really know the backstory of what those police officers were briefed by their commanders, right? They should not have done that, even if it was a direct order, period. End of story. Having said that, I try to put myself in their shoes as well, right? It's so easy for us to sit here and yap about things and, claim, even going back to the Will Smith thing, right? I don't know what their intention is. I don't know who planned it, if it, whatever, but, you're in a position there. I'm going back to the cops in Canada, on the horses. I'm thinking, look, if you're there, you're not behaving and you're not making decisions in the same way that you guys and I right now in this forum would be making a decision. Nice, calm, low heart rate. There's not thousands of people around me to where I have to react to potentially save my own life as well, right? So all I'm saying is, let's reserve some judgment in terms of the actual cops there on the street, because there's a lot of stuff we don't know, right? And don't get me wrong, I'm not excusing that action, right?
Oh, no. Well, who knows what they were told? Because if they listen to Trudeau, the people with the bouncy castles, they're terrorists. And I'm like, really? Because you saw footage where it was like a carnival or a state fair. And then the police come in. Well, here in Victoria, when we had it, most of the violence that started was from the police side of things. But also, who knows what's being told? Because if you go against this order, we'll fire you. There could be threatening for their pay. I want to, I can't remember how to do it, but I'll add into it as well. If you look at what the United States has been doing to whistleblowers, how because I was going to bring that up. In military, there is a way of if it's an unethical, legal's the wrong word, because the Holocaust and slavery was legal, if you follow.
Legality and ethics, they can be something totally, they can be two different things.
Yes,
Totally.
yes,
totally.
Yeah.
I think ethics are the core, they're supposed to be the core for our behavior, like a Homo sapiens in general, right?
Yeah.
You,
yeah.
Because
let's go to the whistleblowers. Bradley Manning, Edward Snowden, and the king of the whistleblowers, who actually pointed out the crimes of the US government, Julian Assange, where they want him to be tried for treason, which is kind of weird because he's an Australian citizen who's in Europe. And how long's that been going on for? The way he's being treated. And they're acting like, have you noticed the evil Team Dark? They're emotionally about 5. It's like, well, he ruined it for us because he released all this, the crimes that have been committed. And so instead of being an adult about it, it's like, yes, we did that or whatever at one end. They're acting like children right at the other, and like, well, he should be here and tried for treason. How is it treason? He's not an American citizen. And you can go from that aspect all the way down to the police on the streets. They're being told they have to follow certain things, and there's an element of brainwashing, and of course, economically everything's shithouse, and they don't want to lose their job, and so they're put into a certain position as well. Where here in Victoria, there were a lot of police who were against what was happening, but they had to keep their job so they could buy food for their kids.
Yeah, but I think the most valuable thing that we have, like a human beings, the most valuable and precious things that we possess, that's the ability of critical thinking, right? That's why we supposed to have the critical thinking. You need to stay informed, and I think it's duty actually to search for a different source of information and to actually make decisions based on your own judgments and values, not to be just to listen what we've been told. Because at that point, you're not a Homo sapiens, you're not an intellectual being at that point. You're like a machine. And if your actions are not defined by your values, at that point, what exactly are you? It's a question.
You're exactly right, Rossen. And unfortunately, we've seen it go on for this whole global war on terror for 20 years. I was one of the first persons to actually, myself and Carl Erickson, we were some of the first people to invade Afghanistan. We had a justification for invading Afghanistan. It was to go back after the people that caused 9/11. All right. And then, of course, it rolled into Iraq, and we did a little bit in Somalia and the Horn of Africa there. And then we went into Iraq. And then after the invasions were over, we watched it change to where soldiers started becoming police. And we got to be very careful of that UN or that NATO Article 5 of NATO, where, you know, everybody starts judging the soldiers, and the same thing's happening to law enforcement right now. I mean, and it got to a point where just like Monty was saying, we're supposed to be soldiers. We're in Afghanistan or Iraq, and we're told to give these people that we roll up. We know they're Taliban. We know they're Al Qaeda in Iraq or whatever. We roll them up. We capture them or capture them as prisoner, but we have to basically give them their rights, and we have to treat them like they're a criminal back in the United States, you know, and they have the right to remain silent, and we can't touch them. We can't do this. Even after the soldier fails to do that, he gets in trouble, right? And it starts becoming where if there's not a mission statement and you're out of your charter of your job, then your job becomes very confusing, and it becomes political, or it becomes politicized, you know. And a good example is the FBI. What American trusts the FBI now? I mean, when I was a kid, I looked up to the FBI. If the FBI came knocking on my door right now, I'd be trying to run out of the country. I know they would just use anything that I said against me and say I lied to the FBI, and I'd be in solitary confinement and not allowed to talk to a lawyer for a year. I mean, and it's going that way from soldiers all the way to the law enforcement. And you look at the Democratic Party, the ones who had slavery, the ones who started the KKK, they fought against women's suffrage. They're the ones who had, you know, segregation and stuff like that, and they twisted around so completely that now they're the upstanding citizens, and the those of us who and our families who fought against that kind of stuff, we're the bad guys now. And I think it's becoming with more frequency and at a faster pace. It's just confusing the entire issue on purpose to break down the moral structure of all of our democracies or free countries.
Well put, well put. With this, I want to bring forth another idea. 250 something years ago, we had the Revolutionary War, and it started with a set of documents. Can we have a virtual new constitution written and people join it virtually or physically? Is it even legal for us to declare to our ruling swamp elite, the time has come to separate your tyranny from our sovereignty? Can that even legally be done? David, you have a big law background. Is that even possible?
It is possible. Way back in the day, I don't know if they still do that. We had a function of government called referendum. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. Some of you may have been. And a referendum is basically you have a policy issue on the table, and the politicians are not they're not capable of debating this policy because you don't trust them. You put it to the public, and you have the public decide, and the public will decide what is in their interest. Okay, so there is that facility that has always been open. In the case of what was happening in Canada, as an example, that could have been done very simply, because then you can see what the true facts are and how people feel. Okay, but now that wasn't done. The problem with what you're saying, Andrew, is the following. We have a bunch of politicians all over the world, and they talk freedom, but inside they're deep narcissists. Okay, and so when you have that narcissistic personality, the point is to control. Okay, and control will look like controlling the media, first of all, because if you're a politician that controls the media, you don't actually have to be fair. So yes, you can. The citizenry can absolutely create a facility where they're saying we need to be free in the true sense of the word, as in free to express our disapproval of you without you, like as an example, freezing my bank account. Okay, they can absolutely do that. But the problem with that is that everybody we are human beings and we're communal creatures. We look to the internet and we look to mass media as a sort of counsel or sort of informative device. And so if a politician controls that, he can tell you that this is how you feel. Okay, so yes, the time has come for something to be done, but
a global
by the media.
Right. A global constitution. We, the people of the disunited nations of this world, under these articles, begin to declare to the local tyranny governments, we rescind our citizenships and join the global citizenry. And
yes,
they dictate to the people.
Man, come on. Right. Like you have, here's the thing. There used to be a time when the left was like all about country and so on, and the right was about commerce and so on, and there were these stereotypes. Everything has become one big ball of narcissism now, right? Mm-hmm. And the real problem is the actual politicians, because I want to say something to the entire panel here. When you are all of those world governments and all the voters in the world, it comes down to the lesser of two evils. Can you remember a time when you voted for somebody because you actually believed in them? You remember the time when you voted for somebody because you liked their moral standing and so on? Now it is, I just want to avoid the other guy. You feel me? And so everybody's like that. So it's the lesser of two evils. And in the US specifically, and I'm going to point to you guys, it's always the lesser of two evils. And it doesn't matter if somebody may be morally corrupt, as the gentleman before was saying. I don't know his name. It used to be, I just want to avoid the other guy. The Obama Clinton thing, I just want to avoid her. Understood? And then you had the next election, I just want to avoid this person. And everything is just a backlash. And the polarity that is set up by the media, where you have people making people fight against each other. The problem is, Andrew, with what you're saying, is that you would have to get the people to come together and say, we've had enough of this shit. I don't want to hate my neighbor. I don't want to hate my neighbor. My neighbor lives across there. He may have different views from me, but he's absolutely entitled to do so. Right. But that's not what is being portrayed. And so to get the people to come together to do this, that's the hardest thing ever.
Sure. This is why it has to use global marketing techniques. The only technique we have available to us that they give us power in which to do what? Pay to play. Now, that's the truth. All of these other systems out there, there is no enforcement for the will of the people. The will of the people is a sham. It's a myth. It was never real to begin with. Okay? The very founding parts of our Constitution are nothing but a spendthrift trust. It was to take on a debt to make sure to fund a revolution. Where did that debt get paid to? We already know that all the wars go through the debt. If we as educators begin to educate people and the potentials of how to get out. So we're talking about the founding of the Constitution, its original intentions before there were the sellout situations in which where the debt had to be paid, because the bill always has to be paid. Now, when it comes to this fiat debt, if you had something that was like an example, a preamble to a global constitution, where you have an internet bill of rights attached to your human bill of rights, you have proper tax laws that are written without loopholes for the specialists, and truly an equal system, as well as the courts being completely restructured so that the laws that Congress or the global Congress write are so clearly defined that you don't need 2/3 of Congress to repeal something that was written wrong on purpose.
Andrew, can I speak to something?
Sure.
It's interesting. We talk about the Constitution being the document for the people, but we're facing something different. We're facing, we were supposed to have the information highway, the media, so that we could express our thoughts without control. Now that's being controlled now. We're being taught how to think about, our own rights. And now we've become a global anemic society. around the world. And basically the world has become a planetary Earth hospice, where it's just accelerating, and it's going to keep accelerating. If the people do not stand for their own constitution in each nation, we're going to keep blaming somebody, but we've got to bring the right back to our own nations, and we need to come together globally. There are leaders out there that are putting peace initiatives. I was involved in one of those, to keep weapons out of space. I won't go into that, but that's what we were doing. But when you're dealing with other leaders trying to control the global economies, oil and gas, gold, whatever, the fiat, we need to understand as the people, what does it mean? What does the Constitution mean for everybody on this planet?
And there's the element as well of how do you defend that as well, so it doesn't happen again. Like the space thing. If one weapon goes up there, the whole thing's changed, because you need to defend. I'm thinking and speaking at the same time, but that's my thought. But you understand where it's the defense. Yeah,
I want to say something here based on the legalities, international law. Now, you have the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and we did this on the last show where I brought the document to show you guys. There have been blatant breaches of that document worldwide. Okay, nobody pays the piper here. Okay, that document is supposed to be an ironclad document. And thank you, Monty, for the last time I was on the show, when you said to me, the man with the stick does not care about your piece of paper.
Yeah, that's where we're at. Yeah.
The man with the stick does not care about your piece of paper. And you should teach law school, actually. Like you should have been my professor, right? Because that actually had me thinking, and I'll tell you why. Because we went through every article of the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Now that document is broken up and it forms the constitution of most of your countries, right? That's the basis that they use to create their constitutions. And so the original document is very clear. It is very clear that no other law that you put in is supposed to supersede the Declaration of Human Rights. Canada is a signatory to that document, the United States, and just about every country on earth is. So when it is that you countermand that document by creating laws, you're already in breach of that document, but nobody's going to be held in account. This is the real facts of where we are in the world. So if you guys are thinking that law will save anything at this point, no, it won't.
Can I give you an example? Can I give you an example? Sure. Premier Daniel Andrews, during the pandemic and the lockdowns, actually said human rights, if you're talking about human rights, you're being selfish. He actually said that at a press conference.
Selfish, why?
Well, he wanted total control, and he was fighting a disease, and this disease will hunt and kill you. And we haven't seen that disease do that. But that's where he actually, because he actually said, I don't know what these people are protesting. And the journalist said, you. Well, okay then. And he's completely out of touch. But he was pointing that we have to work together, the greater good and human rights. You're being selfish. And he actually said that. And it's like, where do you go from there without, armed rebellion?
You know how that sounds? That sounds like the Pope during the medieval times and the Inquisition. It's just a different form,
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. The religion,
the moral philosophy here is wrong. John Stuart Mill's philosophy of the greater good was never meant to be applied this way, okay? In the Western world, the standard of moral philosophy that we operate on is the golden rule. And it kind of sums up to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's the standard that we usually operate on, okay? So they are creating a new standard, a new paradigm, a new precedent. And the precedent is the greater good should prevail. Once you listen, once you put that standard in, that means that any emergency that you find yourself in at any point in time, then human rights can be suspended. The world is allowing this precedent to actually take place. Okay.
Right. And the new precedent is do unto others before they do to you.
It's okay. It's okay when we do it.
He's exactly right.
Yeah.
We've lived almost 2 years with this biological warfare from China, and it has shut down the world, right? In the United States, we have the First Amendment to the Constitution. The First Amendment has 5 things in it: freedom of religion, freedom of speech, all right, freedom of the press, the right to assemble, and the right to address grievances against the government without fear of repercussions. All right. All those were stomped on during this pandemic and for the greater good of everybody. All right. And they were basically taken away from all of us. I'm still an optimist. I think in the United States, the next amendment to the Constitution should be term limits. Because if you notice, it's the establishment. For example, here in the United States, if a man gets elected to Congress, he can go serve in Congress for 2 or 4 years. He goes back to his district a millionaire. There's something wrong in that. I think we should have term limits.
I have to weigh in here.
Absolutely no retirement from the government.
I have to weigh in. When you mix the judiciary with the, sorry, go ahead.
No, the big question is that people needs to be very sensitive about that.
Yep.
You know, that people must be very sensitive about it. And sadly, we do not witnessing that. You know, the entire First Amendment of the Constitution, it was gone and still gone. And people are not sensitive about it. They cannot understand that's a you know, it's a threat. It's really one of the greatest threat in general.
Yeah. We can't let the snowflake Karens mob rule have power anymore.
Is it snowflake Karen? They're just trying to change the moral philosophy of the Western world. And once that changes, I'm telling you, Andrew, this show that we're having here right now, it can be deemed not good for the moral good, the greater good.
Right. The moral minorities rule.
You know, let me jump in and say something that's going to really piss off the whole internet. The internet.
Awesome.
I think that the correct thing for us to do as humankind, and feel free to hate me for it because we're used to it, shut down the internet for good. No internet. Get rid of cell phones. Make people work the land game. Make people connect with outside. None of this bullshit walking down the street doing this 24 hours a fucking day. What is this? We've turned into subhumans. All of us, right? All of us are now glued to these machines, telling us what to do, listening, you know, the Alexas and the iPhones. We are a bunch of Nancys. Humankind is becoming weak and disgusting because we can't stand up for ourselves.
And because we
hate on it, right? This is my opinion.
And that started with newspapers. Like I saw someone shared a meme of like, you know, everyone's looking at their phones now. But if you look at 50, 60 years ago, everyone's on a train reading the paper. And that was more controlled as well. So yeah. Well, if we have an EMP, we'll go back to the Stone Age. No, we fucking won't. It'll be 1880, and that was kind of all right. Not the Stone Age.
You had to boil all your food. That's the big difference.
Yeah, I mean, we'll miss certain things. Yes, I mean, I do like watching Friends. There, I said it. But
that will stimulate.
Go ahead.
That will be a stimulus, you know, to get back and to turn our ability of critical thinking. Now we trust, you know, that Imri, you just could you show your indoctrination box again? It's really cute over there. Your phone, your phone. It's just indoctrination box, right? People are turn like zombies, and there is no critical thinking. If it's in the phone, if it's on TV, that's the truth, really. So where's the actual ability of judgment and compare information and searching? The most important thing, willing to search information in order to take your own decisions and conclusions.
Yeah. But there's a problem there. There's a problem there because if it is, listen, information as we know it has changed. It used to be that books were written, you went to the library, you picked up a book, and you learned something. You try to search for something on the internet, there is no unbiased information on the internet anymore, right? If you go to YouTube right now, and I did that on a live show recently, right? I want to find an opposing view to a popular opinion. It could be woke culture, whatever else. When I type into Google, I want the other view. Google sends me the same view. So it's just a matter of the ratio of what you're trying to, or what the popular view is. You can't get alternative views out there. I have said that independent media will save the world. And as the reason why I say that, and I only say because it's only a certain amount of time before independent media becomes a problem for people.
So
okay,
you said that
here,
you said that actually the information, the way of information is structured, if the information changed, right? Pardon, I disagree with you. It's a very, 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 very old tool. It's how it's said. It's called propaganda. When you actually turn,
no, I agree with you on that.
You flip the tool and you give
with
them a direction. It's called propaganda.
When I was online on a show, on a live show, if you share your screen and you type in, and guys, I know some of you all have opinions, type in an opposing view to the popular opinion. Type in, as an example in your browser, pro-Russian news. Just as an example, I don't care about that stuff. You're going to get anti-Russian results, okay? If you go onto YouTube as an example, when this trucker thing was going on, and you want the trucker side of the story, YouTube deliberately squeezed down that algorithm. Andrew and I were testing it for days, trying to get the trucker's view, the trucker's side of the story. We were testing it for days in terms of the view counts and so on. We saw people's view counts being cut artificially by YouTube on purpose. So these are, I do data science, so I monitor these things. I monitor the way social media moves, right? And so on. And over the last few years, there's been a concerted effort to only present, so it's not just CNN or Fox or ABC. The entire internet has been locked down in particular ways, and they only produce certain kinds of views. So if you want to indoctrinate people, whether through the phones or whether through the computer or whatever else, it's very hard to get around it. So people have to really, really want to look alternatively. And what it does two things which are very, very important. The first thing is that it indoctrinates people who are weak-minded, as Imri, is that your name? If your mind is weak, then you can't think. You can't have critical thinking. You just absorb. But then for people who have a little bit more thinking, it makes you distrustful of anything that's out there. Like right now, if I put any search into Google, I'm not trusting it. So I don't trust anything.
Yeah, I understand. I've got an example as well. I was watching the TV show Deadwood, and you've got Calamity Jane, and I wanted to find out more about her. Now, have you ever put cowgirl into a search engine?
Let's do it now.
No, don't do it.
No.
But that's just
what's going on all over the chat room right now. Imri and I came up with a solution on tactical riflemen for all these snowflakes and Nancys out there, and we think, since it's kind of a sanitary thing for when a male child is born, the next day he gets circumcised. We think that all nipples on men should be removed. That way, there's no reason not to be masculine, right? And men need to stand up for being men, and women need to stop worrying about toxic masculinity, and they need to stand up for themselves too.
Unless it's Stevie Wonder giving the circumcision.
Hey, David, I have a question.
We can do
for
it
you.
in public.
Talk to me.
Hey, David, I have a question. Yeah. Do you think that the internet now is based on, for advertisement, a form of advertisement and ratings? It has become, of course, because we talk about this social platform. So information is just fed based on who's paying the bill.
Okay, so let me put it to you this way. the different social media platforms operate on different stimuli or algorithms. If you're on Facebook, as an example, the popular opinion on Facebook is based on how many people are paying Facebook for that popular opinion. Definitely. Facebook is the prostitute of all social medias, okay? And I diss them every chance I get because of it. If you're on Instagram, it's about the hype. So how much hype? So as many people you could get into hype. Facebook realized that Instagram was going to, because it has a different metric. So Facebook just bought Instagram. Like, Jesus Christ, right? It's like Facebook realized WhatsApp was going to be an alternative source for them. So we're going to buy WhatsApp as well. So Facebook, Zuckerberg was going to lock down people communing and taking opinions. So to answer your question, Google, as an example, Google will push the opinion that most people have based on hits. Facebook will push the opinion that its advertisers have based on payment. Okay, which overall, they were taken to Congress for that, actually, because a nice person goes to Facebook and within 2 weeks, they lead them down a particular rabbit hole. And a lot of people think that, well, my choices on the internet are my choices. That's not true. That's not true. And I wish I could share my screen because I could demonstrate it to you all. Your choices on the internet are predetermined.
Socially engineered.
Yeah, but that's where the power of critical thinking is supposed to actually, that's the biggest remedy of that, against that. That's why we have that thing that is between our ears, right? Or pretend to have that.
Recent example of that. Look at what those executives at Disney have done over something. I mean, they've taken.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, they've taken an issue that wasn't an issue and wasn't a problem, and they've created a huge backlash for themselves. I mean, it's. I think David is right, but it's also a double-edged sword.
The snowflakes are going to get bitch slapped.
Like, when did we become so sensitive and like you attacking comedians? When did all of this happen?
We did it, they did, and it's a mob trying to say everyone's offended because most of us aren't.
And that's where you get social points or SJW points. That's one. Have you noticed? Now it's a broad statement, but have you noticed most people on the left have mental issues? Which is unfortunate because there's a lot of mental illness out there, but the left don't know how to really contain themselves. And I've gone blank again. I had a mind rage. But that's the problem is, like, people like us is like, do no harm and enjoy your life and become the best person you can. But an SJW is like, no, you have pineapple on your pizza. I have to burn your house down now. They're trying to control everyone.
Do you think that
exactly
that's just a coincidence? No, I think that's the behavioral kind of indoctrination leads to some kind of hysterical behavior. We notice, the same patterns of kind of hysterical behavior, and that's because of that kind of engineering such kind of behavioral,
and
presence and understanding.
Yeah, the term is NPC, non-playing character. It's from the video game world. And so you would see the memes where it's like a grey face with a very basic side of a thing. And people are actually pushing back of, how you have those rings around your photo on social media. It's like, I support the current thing. And you're seeing that mob mentality where people like, I mean, it's upsetting that there's people dying in Ukraine and Russia. But how I am sick and tired of seeing the Ukrainian flag. I stand with Ukraine, because like the stuff that's coming out of the Ukraine, where the genocide and the beating, the way I describe it is perfectly what my mother says. They're as bad as each other. but everyone's just jumped onto, you're
Sure.
standing with Ukraine, and if you
Can I
don't,
ask-
you're
can I ask
obviously
you guys a question?
you're obviously for Russia. That's the other problem as well. They only give you 2 options, and I'm choosing option 3, 4, and 5.
Yes. Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
do you remember when we just used to hang out like what we're doing here? I don't really care about right or left. I don't really care about any sides of any story, right? I care how it impacts the people I love, the people and myself, and well, I guess my country and so on. But my point is this division, this left-right nonsense. Andrew and I were speaking about it some weeks ago, and I think we need to coin the alt center, honestly, because really and truly, all this division nonsense is all it does is it creates situations where people can change your mind. And I'll explain to you in psychologically how that works. Because what Soma was referring to there is very important. Critical thinking is very important, but I want to say something to you there's a way to bypass critical thinking, right? And we know it in the hypnotherapy trade, and that's what's happening to people. The way to bypass critical thinking is by giving the mind something called a shock induction, okay? A shock induction makes you make a decision really, really quickly, really, really fast. I want you all to hear this because this is important. A normal, rational thinking person, and we lost our military personnel in here should also listen to this. A normal thinking, rational person, if you present them with craziness on either side of an issue, they will say, I'm not into that craziness and I'm not into this craziness. There's a new technique that is being put up there. It's a shock, right? It's a shock to your system. Choose one or the other, quickly. You remember when this COVID thing was going on? Are you vaxxed? That would be a shock. It puts you on spot, right? That people were asking people this as a validation forum. Are you vaxxed? Are you not vaxxed? It puts you on the spot. You got to make a decision, right? Are you going to be on one side of an issue or are you going to be on the other side of an issue? How many people, when put on the spot directly, are going to say, fuck you, I don't really have to answer your question? Really, I don't have to answer your question. I don't have to answer your question, okay? Because you have the right to not answer that question.
Correct.
You have the right to not answer that question because answering the question in the positive puts you in a particular light. Answering the question in the negative puts you in a particular light. Very few people, however, during this time were able to say, I am not answering your question, right? Because they're not used to this kind of tactic, but it's a basic tactic that was used in hypnotherapy and in mind control, okay? Shock. So let me tell you how it erodes. Let me show you how it erodes your resistance, your mental resistance. Because the comment was made about critical thinking. If I shock you several times a day, you get shocked watching the news. Somebody out there is doing a poll. You go to work and somebody's shocking you. The public is shocking you, right? Eventually, you find yourself sliding one way or sliding the other way, okay? The reason why is because there's continuous shock being put onto your system where you're living in a state of hypervigilance. Hypervigilance means that if I talk to this group of people, they're going to judge me based on that. And the judgment can mean I might lose my job. The judgment might mean that I might lose my friends, lose family members, and so on. It's a loss to me. In Canada, it was taken to the political level where I might lose my bank account, money that I worked for. You feel me? If I feed those truckers, if I do something moral, right? It's not in me to see somebody hungry. So if I feed them, I might feed you. But the punishment that is going to come to me is that my bank accounts may be frozen. So I have to live in fear. I have to make a choice. Once you start making these kinds of choices, your critical thinking becomes eroded and your mind becomes addlepated because there is continuous pressure. You don't want to live in hypervigilance. So it's just easier to choose one side over the other because I know if I go on this side, the consequences are less than that side. That's
right. The global narrative coming to us, each individual to us has been weaponized against us with the critical thinking as an aspect of how to bypass critical thinking. Now, one level higher than this is an understanding like you have a bunch of minor shock things. There's a war here, there's a this there that's all relating to war over 10 years. And then you have a war 10 years later, like Ukraine. It has now validated all of those shocks in each person's individual memory, and it makes them left, right, conservative, or left, alt. And then what David was saying, alt, center. We have to be able to move those goalposts just like they do. And it was actually with Monty that I came up with an idea. Why cannot we not be the new alternate center? Because right now, the left and the right doesn't allow a center to exist.
Correct.
Yeah, if I may interject as well, I actually did some research on the name, and it's already been co-opted by the left that alt center means you're right wing.
Yeah. It's again, it's it's a ancient Roman rule, right? It's a saying: divide and conquer. Put labeling, because everything right now it's labeling. You're labeled like this, then you're labeled like this, then you're labeled like this, and that's create that division. Divide and conquer. It's a very simple but very efficient algorithm, creating polarities, and then you're off balance. You start to taking decision not based on the critical thinking, as you said, based on emotions, and that's.
Rossen, let me add to that. Right, the polarity is bad that it's causing. On the other hand, we need a balance, right? Everything's about balance. The world's about balance. Your mental health is about being balanced, right? Balance is the key. We need a left, we need a right, we need a center, we need an everything, because we need everybody's opinions. We just need people to not be assholes about it and think for themselves. Right?
But the idea is that polarity is supposed to be complementary, right? To achieve the balance. Not to go, like a pendulum swinging to one side and the pendulum swings to the other side. So that's a principle of balance. And this balance, lack of harmony, actually, it's a cause even of the diseases. It's scientifically proven. So it's a very basic principle, let's say, in a universe that can be manipulated easily, or you can be very aware and follow that balance in general, in everything. Follow the balance.
But then the binary of it though is if you've got your two options to keep balance, and if they're wandering off towards a cliff, I don't want to do that. The balance where we had that you're talking about, that does make sense. But what we're seeing, it's not really a two-party system; it's a one-party system. So it's the illusion of balance, and they're heading off in their own direction.
Well, exactly. That's why your example. It's not that the balance is running off the cliff. The masses that are running off the cliff, that's what's out of balance. The balance would be the rest of the people way on the other end, far away from the edge of the cliff, and that's, I believe, where probably the majority of people are, right? The majority of modern people. I mean, look at how many people we all speak to every day that have the same opinions, right? Republican, Democrat, whatever. Nobody gives a shit. Normal people. Rossen and I have been, Rossen and I have been talking about this for a few years. Sue and I have been talking about this separately for a couple of years and kind of bringing it together. We've been talking about, look, we all know what has to be done. We just don't know what the way is to do it. And what I mean by that is fixing. We're talking about our country specifically, because the world is an even bigger issue. And we're only a few people trying to fix a giant country, but we've been talking about it. How do we bring people together? Because we know that what we have to do is bring people together and get off those ledges and come down and have a normal adult conversation. And that's we
start by doing shows like these, networking the old-fashioned way, until such a time you created your own local swarm.
Exactly, and that's exactly.
Even pamphlets and stuff like that, and using here, and this is a great forum to do it. I'll give you an example of something that Imri and I have used in front of our own classes and stuff like that during this whole mandated vaccination thing, and people were getting divided over vaccinated or not vaccinated, and And if you know a little bit about history, you got to ask yourself, how does an entire society get divided like that? And so I came up with the idea, using Imri, as the brunt of my joke. And I said, wait a minute, if you get vaccinated, let's put a patch on your collar saying, with a triangle. And if you get a booster, let's put a triangle facing the other way. And if you don't get vaccinated at all, let's superimpose the triangles. Oh, wait a minute, that's the Star of David. That we
make sure it's yellow. There's got to be yellow triangles.
That's a good analogy.
Not only is this hilarious, you should have seen the faces of some of my incredibly left-wing family when I brought Seaux over, and he made that joke, left-wing, very, very Jewish. It was, and everybody, what?
Well, that happened in Germany. Germany, they gave out yellow stickers for the vaccinated, and everyone that knows history is like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
I haven't heard about the stickers thing.
And you can use Ukraine. You can use Ukraine and Poland as the same example of what's going on right now today. I mean, I just went back to my bookshelf and got this book called Bloodlands. If you guys, it's history repeating itself. What's going on between Russia and Ukraine, and what's going on in Western Europe, and even here in the United States. It's just basically history repeating itself. And I think what we need to do is start demanding that our educators get off of sexual orientation and start preaching what really happened, so we keep our grandchildren from making the same mistakes that we did or our parents did.
Yeah, because nobody cares about the history anymore. It's we will tend to repeat the same mistakes. Because of that, we are not wise enough, like a human kind in general, because we always forgetting about history. We don't care about history anymore, and of course we will tend to repeat the same mistakes. We are so concerned about purely artificial problems that are artificially created, that are distractions, and we're not focused about the real things that can actually repair the world society in general. That's why I stated with that Hollywood drama. Who cares? Do you think that's the biggest problem right now in the world? Absolutely no. A slap? No. Come on, give me a break. It's just a distraction.
I remember talking to Andrew. We joke around, as you may have noticed, that we like to joke, and it's like we're living in 1984, and I can't remember if it was Andrew or I, but we realized no, it's 1983 because these people are idiots. Yeah. Like 1984 is it
success.
It works. Successful. Yeah, we're in 1983 where it's like but this is what gives me hope. Is that, well, this conversation, if that makes sense. Like, you see those doomers in the conspiracy world, it's all over, they've won, blah, blah, blah. And yet you have the Freedom Convoy in Canada. You have conversations like this. You have all, most of us are nice, as it was mentioned earlier. And there is a pushback because they can't go too fast. They learned that with, observing what Hitler did. He went too fast too quickly. And you saw how that ended up.
So real quick,
it's in the chat room right now about how about stop making it illegal for kids to attend public school, and I totally agree with that. That's why I brought up the Disney thing. It's parental rights. What do we want our children? Do you want to hand your children over to the state, basically to Heinrich Himmler, and do the Nazi youth again? And let them decide how your children think. It's crazy, and we've seen it time and again in history. And when our children get, told to go to a public school or a public forum, and they're watching everything on media, whether it's newspapers, television, or the internet. And I'm sorry, Imri, it happened long before the internet. It's happened again and again in history, where the next generation basically gets brainwashed into turning against their parents and turning against society, and we've got to stand up and stop that.
For the last 500 years, there's been a systematic erasure of our oral teachers and historians, which funds the dumbing down of humanity. Just between World War I, World War II, the Spanish flu, and post-World War II, how much of the population, our elders who would have been oral teachers and historians through experience, have been removed from us. In the early 1960s, they stopped teaching equity as a court of law, yet it still exists.
Civics as well.
Civics. Stop the teaching of civics. The erasure of the oral teachers and historians has disconnected us from the natural race remembering of what this, and this, like you guys have just said, can mean to future generations. It's just not the grandpa on the porch sipping lemonade anymore. It's the truth of what they teach you over all the lemonades and all the experiences that you have with your elders.
Mm.
Yeah, education, it's extremely important thing. That's one of the cores. You need to start from there, because that will define, social behaviors that will form the moral system and values in general. These kids are, this is where they are shaped, with their beliefs. It's
an interesting
huge
time
responsibility.
As well. Yeah, an interesting time as well, because the baby boomers are aging out. Because like my mum's a baby boomer, so my grandparents, they're dying. But my grandmother was like 14 during the Great Depression. And so completely different worldview from, say, my dad. Or even my dad was born in 1940. What I'm getting at is, as that generation moves on, the next is Gen X's, and yeah, we groovy. But my point is, we don't have that connection to the past, and to have those oral traditions and just even family history of like there was the great gold steal in the 1932-33, where the government said, "Give us all your gold and we give you money," and they changed everything. There's stories of grandparents. I think even Andrew, you mentioned, like you had family members that still hid gold and silver under their mattress, right, even into the 1980s, because they don't trust the government for obvious reasons. And that's the other thing as well, is Gen X, we're the last, if I get it right, we're the last generation before the internet. So we're the crossover, where we've grown up with the internet, but we remember being allowed out till 6 p.m. at night, freely wandering about and being outside and eating dirt and all that type of stuff. So that's our part of, we've seen both worlds in the evolution.
There comes a point where we all can agree we do have a common moral code, and we can no longer let the moral minority define the majority's morals, because this is a system of the black sheep trying to lead the herd here. The lone mob in the corner defining what our rules are. No, the moral majority has to stand up and say, what is the common moral code we can all share and agree on?
Well, David Ellis has a perfect, he gave a perfect example of how it works in the psychosis of humankind, right? What we need to do is start shocking the populace by telling the truth. Stand up and tell the truth, and shock everybody every day. I mean, when Dr. Fauci tries to come up with another reason for a lockdown, I mean, I could become a hero by walking across the stage and bitch slapping him. Bitch slap that man. And then we all got something to talk about.
I just had that visual.
That's kind of the problem as well. Like comedy, actually, yeah. Comedy is one of the last bastions where you can do that. But now, after last weekend, there's a precedent that if someone in the crowd disagrees with a joke that I say, where it's truth-based as information, they can come up and slap me because they've seen it on international television.
Monty, before anything happens, my condolences on your face, because based on your jokes, my man, you would get slapped every day.
No, actually, no. To be fair, I have chairs thrown at me. They'll go past the slaps. They'll just throw the chair at me.
You know, they started this war on comedy because comedy was an avenue where you could express. Dave Chappelle, right? Dave Chappelle, who's the other guy? They even attacked Joe Rogan because I think the Joe Rogan thing was to minimize his ability to have power, because he has a lot of power with that podcast when you're averaging more views than CNN or any of the, but come on. After they were upset, I don't care about his views on COVID or ivermectin or whatever the case may be. CNN tried to do a hit job on this man. They did. They failed miserably. And then you're going to turn around and say, well, he used the N-word how many times? Listen, look at my skin color. You think I think that Joe Rogan is racist? Come on. This man is not racist. Come on. Right? Like any reasonable, rational thinking person looks at that and says, this man is not a racist. Okay? But that just came out of nowhere. That just came out of nowhere. So they will, and this is the thing that annoys the hell out of me, to think that people that like the critical thinking is gone to run that kind of game on people so that people will be all upset to try to cancel Joe Rogan, right? Because he's the N-word several times when this man has been in MMA for God knows how long, right? Mm-hmm. Not too many. Look, you up with those fighters and you're training with them and you're throwing hands with them, whether it's a sparring session, them listen, and you racist, you won't survive out there. Okay? You
exactly. You won't survive the sparring ring with another MMA guy.
They suspect that you're racist. Come on, like seriously.
Yeah, and Joe Rogan keeps having black Americans on. So if he's a racist, he sucks at it.
It's not only that, but the fact is that they tried it, and it was transparent.
Yeah, because that was only 3 days, because they tried it for the remember, it was Plan B. That whole thing about the N-word was Plan B, because less than a week before they tried something else and it failed.
It's Plan B, Plan Black, is that?
Yeah.
And that's again.
Oh no! You just pointed out. I am not racist. I'm not racist. I'm not racist. I say black with love.
And that's again a attempt of division. It's a attempt of division again. You know that promotion of kind of creating an artificial racism. It's a way of division. It's a creating artificial problem that do not exist in that extent that they're trying to proclaim. It's actually that's creating a division. Speaking about it, judging somebody based on a race, it's a pure definition of a racism. So if you talk too much about racism, that means you're racist. It makes sense, right?
Yes, that what you look at looks back at you. It does influence you.
It's projection. It's projection.
It's projection. Correct. Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was to say, then how did the pandemic create racism?
Well, it came from China, and you can't call it Chinese. I mean, we still call it the Spanish flu, but that's racist. So it's, but you can't say
China. In Toronto, when the pandemic first started, in Toronto, every Chinese restaurant had trouble making a living. Okay? Just so that we're clear.
Yeah,
okay?
From that soup. Yeah.
Now, China's kind of a big place, So the places where Guangdong is far from the other, and Chinese cuisine is not generic. It's not just one thing. There are different kinds of dishes from different places. But people didn't understand that. So the Chinese Canadians, it didn't matter whether you were Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese, or whatever. They had to mask up. Double mask up and everything, right? Because they knew what was going to happen. They knew, right. They intrinsically knew. All right, you got to give them their props. They knew what was going to happen. So they stayed like far away from you and so on. And I'm like, I'm getting into an elevator and there's this guy. I know the difference between, they look different. People think that Asians are the same. They're not. There's a big difference between someone who's Korean and somebody who's Chinese. There's a Korean dude in the elevator in my building. And he's like, is it okay? Is it okay if I I'm like, my man, get into the elevator, right? You're not gonna kill me in the elevator. Like just being in an elevator with you is not gonna kill me. And you're Korean. You're not Chinese, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost embarrassing for us to allow, again, back to the public school systems. I'm coming to you from North Carolina, so I can't be a racist because I don't even watch NASCAR, right? But what I'm impressed with,
that's offensive.
But
you're not a racist, Sue.
Yeah,
you're not a racist.
Get in the car. Yeah.
Honestly, though, my adult children and the generation behind that and the kids in school right now, I can honestly say that they don't even know what racism is. They didn't go through the civil rights movement. They damn sure don't understand. They didn't experience slavery and things like that. But to take critical race theory and things like that, and this is stepson out of public school, right? And so I've made that step, right? Is when they took the black kids in the class and they set them over there on the other side of the classroom, and then they made all the white kids apologize to the black kids. And these kids 45 minutes before that were best friends on the football team or the soccer team.
Why did they do that?
Trying to teach their racism.
Race theory.
But the whole thing about
how you do. Oh my God! Wow, no.
Yeah, that's why people are against it, and people that are
indoctrinating racism into the next generation.
Well, this actually happened in the school.
Yeah. This is the whole fight that's happening in the US, David. Is that they think they're teaching racism, but about racism, but they're teaching racism itself. Where they actually tell the black kids they're useless and not worth anything because of 400 years of slavery and all this whole shit.
Come on, look, wow, I didn't even know that. I don't even follow that story.
Yeah, enjoy that rabbit hole.
That's ridiculous, and that would be kind of awkward for the black students as well.
Okay? Oh yeah. 8-year-olds are being told that
up and down the East Coast of the United States right now.
Yeah, and people are like, if you're against critical race theory, you're called a racist because you, the left or whatever, they think that you want to keep the systemic racism in the systems thing. But if you actually look at the theory, it's actually teaching racism. It's perpetuating the whole thing. It's that whole thing of the left where, she's a black woman. It's like, really? I'm actually judging her on her merits. She's an awesome basketball player. That if you bring up Martin Luther King, his speech, you judge people on, well, not big fun judge, but you go by their merit and what they can do. The latest Supreme Court thing. Oh, it's a black woman. But is she good? Oh, you're just a racist and a sexist. No, I want to know if she's actually good. And apparently she's not, because she can't actually describe what a woman is because she's not a biologist.
So very simple, judge somebody or define somebody's position or position in society or whatever, judge them based on race, not about abilities, qualities, values. That's a pure definition of racism. You're absolutely right.
I want to say something here to my American friends. You guys need to get out of the US, okay? Because let me explain to you, the corruption is from bottom to top. When you marry a judicial system to a political system, it never will end well. If it starts wrong, it ain't gonna end right. You're telling me that the party in power has the power of appointment for the particular judge on a Supreme Court, which is the highest court of the land. How is that different from politics? Because they're going to choose the judge that sides with their particular agenda. Am I correct or am I not correct? How is this fair?
On a base level, yeah, because remember Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, and they had this whole thing about Trump of like, oh, wait for the election to appoint a new judge, and Trump's gone, no, we'll just do it because that's what you do. And this is the other thing about the left-right paradigm. The left attacks the right for, I mean, it's either right. It's okay when we do it, if you've noticed that, and it's both sides do it at the same time. But Kavanaugh as well, like all this disgusting stuff, like because of the Trump presidency, the left and the media have taken away the respect for the office, and that will never come back. And so because they hated Trump so much, they attacked the office. And so whoever's in the office now, that respect has been removed because of these idiots.
Can I say something to you guys? Because if I was a politician and I was particularly narcissistic, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to give a few people ideas here. I would run for office. If I won the office and became president, my next action would be blowing up the entire Supreme Court. And then appointing all the judges, all of them 19 years old, of course, right? 19 years old. This just follow me here, follow my logic.
Is there a trans person there? There better be a trans person. Come on.
Who have my particular agenda. Once the Supreme Court is in place, all I have to do is put a law that says, I am president for life. Let the Supreme Court back it. You could sue me, but it'll go to the Supreme Court, and guess what? I would win. That is how corrupt your system is. Do you understand that? Right? Because all they have to do is stack the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the final decision in your land. It is not really the government as such. The president has executive powers. Absolutely, he does. But he cannot go against the laws of the land. So if it is that a politician does something and you try to action him in court, it will go to the Supreme Court. We know this, okay? And the number of judges that are on one side of the fence as opposed to the other side of the fence will determine what the actual law is and what the precedents are. So my point is, how do you marry those two systems, the judicial system and the political system, and expect that it will end well? Whose idea was this? Please help me out.
Who gets custody? Who gets custody of the kids?
It's not a good idea. It's not a good idea,
David. In the defense, it's supposed to be checks and balances. The judicial, the executive, and the legislative is supposed to be three separate things. But I'm not as pessimistic as you are. I'm not going to leave the United States because, if the United States was so bad, why are we having so many people trying to jump across our border? We've already got 2 million people trying to come to our country already, because we're the last bastion of hope for the world, I think. We still have time, I think, to change things without going to violence. It goes to violence.
I have two answers to that question. I have two answers to that statement. Number one, when you are ready, I have a tub of poutine waiting for you. That's number one. Number two, with regard to people coming into the US, even that has been political, because the people coming into the US will vote one way, and it's not going to be right.
Coming in, the high levels, they're going to traditionally vote Democrat during the immunity phases. And that's how the Democrats are able to recycle and regurgitate vote strength. Yeah.
They're going to stack the population.
I want to second what Sue was saying, because David, I'm listening to you, and a lot of what you're saying, I'm super in tune with. Really agree. I'm not leaving the United States. Rossen's not leaving, and Sue's not leaving. Our core group, we're very aligned on this, and we've been talking about this a lot. Look, Rossen and I both moved here as younger people, different ages. I moved here younger than Rossen did. And we live here because we love living here. Mm-hmm. Right? There's only one reason we live here, because we choose to live here. We love living here. We do, all three of us. I say all three of us, I'm excluding everybody else because I don't know you personally well, right? But Sue and Rossen are two of my very, very best friends. And we love this place. One of the biggest reasons why we do what we do for a living today, I'm not talking about military stuff, I'm talking about what we're doing today. We educate. Now, we educate on the knowledge that we have, right? The fighting skills, various things like that. But really at the top of that, what we're doing is we're passing on our ethics. We're passing on our moral code of how to be a human being. And that gets balanced very, very well in what we do with what we're actually teaching, which can be a very destructive skill, right? So we have to pick and choose who we teach as well. So that's why I just wanted to reply to what you're saying by saying, we're not fucking leaving this place, right? We're staying here and we're going to keep this our home. And I hope that the whole world can say that about their countries, right? We live here because this is the freest country to date, right? This is the freest country that I am certainly aware of. Our rights are being eroded slowly or not so slowly, depending on how you see it. And that's exactly why we're staying here and we're creating conversation. We're creating or trying at least to recreate an actual society, right? As opposed to, a bunch of machines sitting like this, getting whatever information they decide that, they're going to build their truth on. So that's my little spiel. All I'm saying is I ain't leaving this fucking place. I'm going to die here.
Understood.
Yeah. And
Do you think
to caveat what Imri said, we don't teach violence. I mean, we teach a lot of skills that we learn in the military and their survival skills and tracking skills and all kinds of other stuff. What we do is we teach self-confidence, right? So if somebody like Will Smith comes up and bitch slaps you, you knock his fucking head off. It's that simple,
See, he has become a teaching tool. See, as irrelevant as it may be, but it's still a wonderful teaching tool for the ignorant masses who remain blissfully ignorant to critical thinking.
I'm going to throw something into the mix, Andrew. Andrew, I'm going to throw something. Do you think that would be the same if Mike Tyson was hosting the Oscars? Do you think if Mike Tyson had made that joke, Will Smith would have walked up on stage and said, keep my wife's name out of your effing mouth. Right?
Will Smith, I do remember Will Smith did release a song saying, I think I can knock Mike Tyson out. He did release a song called that. So I don't know. But it'd be interesting.
A whole lot
imagine if it was Mel Gibson up there.
Or maybe a woman. And I am a biologist. So
Alec Baldwin.
Well, Dave, you're in Canada, correct? You're up in Canada now.
Yeah,
right?
I'm in Canada. And
well, if you look behind me there, that's the greatest game that's ever been played. Now you can go out on the ice and you can knock the crap out of each other and you get 5 minutes to rest, and you can come back and play again. I love that game.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. When I saw things, honestly, let me explain to you my thing, and Andrew can tell you. When I saw things going south in Toronto, because Toronto's the whole Toronto experiment has been a huge failure for Canada, a huge one, right? I ran like a little girl, and I'll tell you why I did. Because they passed the number, when COVID hit Toronto, they had neighbors snitching on neighbors, like snitching. There was a snitch line set up. Can you imagine that? Right? Uber had a snitch line as well. It was really, really bad. And I'm like, I'm out. I'm actually just gonna go to closer to the North Pole. Andrew knows where I am. I'm just gonna go closer to the North Pole, right? And out here, I found people who are like you guys, actually. Okay, but and Andrew jokes about it because I'm in literally redneck Canada, and I feel so relaxed.
I remember trying to tell him, David, wait till you get your first gun. You get your first rattlesnake kill. You feed your first moose.
Andrew, I have something to say about that, right? So I did the PAL because they're restricted up until the 9th, right? And so now our PAL, the restricted license, right, for guns and ammunition, I'm going for it because in the next few months, he's taking 1,500 guns off of that list, right? It's a de-arming process. You know that, right?
Yeah, so you got to buy them all up.
Right? It's a de-arming process. So I have seen some things in Canada that makes me worry. And he's de-arming these people on purpose because He doesn't want to. I think what happened in Ottawa spooked him quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
It definitely spooked him. So he's taking about 1,500 guns off the roster. So even if you are licensed and you go through training and stuff like that, you still can't get them. So whatever gun you're going to be able to get will only have a capacity of like 5 rounds.
Yeah.
Speaking of one
That's
question, I just have one question for everybody here. We are thinking, we're discussing things. If you delegate, the importance of the Second Amendment, it's not only about that. We know that there's a continuation there, but very simple question. Mm-hmm. If you delegate the most sovereign right, what's one of the most sovereign right? The ability of self-defense, right?
Yep.
It's one of the most sovereign rights. If you delegate that to the third party, can you say for yourself that you're a free citizen?
No.
You're dependent. No. You're dependent on an institution, and you're absolutely dependent on what that institution will define. And you're dependent on the judicial system as well. And you give up the most sovereign right, the ability of self-defense. You're not a free citizen at that point. At least right. I actually understand it like this.
You have no citizenry privileges. You are less than a citizen at that point.
It's basically outsourcing your safety to someone else, which is ridiculous.
Correct. And then after that, they bombard you in the name of safety. You need to do this in the name of safety. You need to do that.
That's why all the billionaires have Swiss bank accounts. They keep money in Switzerland. It hasn't been invaded for 400 years, and every male that graduates high school has to do 4 months of military training and goes home with an assault rifle, right? One of the biggest secrets that they kept from the rest of the world there when I was in Baghdad was, when Brennan came in and screwed everything up, after we told them that the Ba'athist Party wasn't allowed to exist anymore, all the citizens in Baghdad were allowed to have an AK-47 and 3 magazines of ammunition in their house for security. So everywhere we went as American soldiers, every time we went to what we thought was an insurgent's or an Al-Qaeda in Iraq member's house, we already knew that there was at least 1 AK-47 and 90 rounds of ammunition in there. Why isn't the rest of the world allowed to do that for the purpose of security?
Yeah. Hey, that segues perfectly into my question. So I want to tap the collective intelligence on this roundtable. The time has come for me to arm up. I live in the rainforest. I live up a dirt road about 10 kilometers up into a mountain range in southern Costa Rica. 2 nights ago, at my wife's insistence, I was forced to kill a meter-long fer-de-lance with a walking stick. I just about shit my pants. With that terciopelo, you might know, some of you might know it by. I need 1 gun, and this is what I need. I need home protection, where if people were to come to my home, they would probably have 38s made in Argentina. I need to be able to kill pigs. I need to be able to kill goats. Occasionally, I have to put down a horse if it gets bit by a certain kind of spider over here. And basic home defense. What is the 1 gun I'm looking at? A shotgun?
How good are you with guns?
There's no experience.
This is a matter of opinion, right?
Yeah, there's no experience.
Yeah, no experience, right. First of all, you need training, period, end of story. You're not going to get in a plane and fly it without appropriate training, right? That'd be stupid. Same thing with a gun. However, nobody here among the 3 of us is going to give you a brand or a whatever, right? But that's why AR-15s are what they are, right? Because it is a tool that was incredibly well designed to be ergonomically comfortable, and it works. It works. But your question has more than just what is the ultimate gun for my purpose. You also have the question is what is the availability in the place that I'm living in, right?
Yeah.
Every tool has its job. You're asking for a tool that can do everything. And if there's one thing that gets anywhere near that, it would be an AR-15.
Wow. Okay. I thought a shotgun because they need the spray to kill a snake, right?
No, that's
that would
too
be
much. That's too much. You need maybe a 410 instead of a 12 gauge. And there are handguns that can fire 410 shells and regular 45 shells.
Forest Judge, it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, we don't need to discuss little thing, right? There is the can of worms you just opened is the next 2.5 hour conversation, right? That's how big of a question that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you
So
get a pistol,
not a
let me
howitzer?
put it this way, and I know that Rossen and Seaux are going to back me up on this. If you get a pistol and you really learn how to use it, you must learn how to use it. You can do all of those jobs you just said with your pistol.
Exactly.
We shoot pistols at 100 meters.
okay.
We do it. Right?
Yeah. So typically over here,
I got some news for you though, Bruce.
Mm.
You got to go through a 7-step process in Costa Rica to get a gun. 7 steps, like,
and that's probably a pistol.
Now,
Most
Bruce,
likely.
Bruce, ask Imri why he has my 308 that looks like an AR-15, and that's what I do for a living. Is I design different types of ammunition for all those purposes you mentioned.
So it's like a set me, like a AR 308.
Well, I don't know where we're showing this. The gun that Seaux is talking about is literally right next to me. If we can show it. Well,
Yeah.
if Sue's doing it, I'm doing it.
While he's doing that,
Yeah.
can I just point out, as an Australian, the only thing that I've held is a price gun.
There you go. This is the gun that Seaux is talking about. It's big
Okay.
and scary because.
Hey, Imri, that looks very scary. It looks like an assault rifle from.
Yeah, I'm
right.
triggered.
That's right.
I'm triggered. I'm assaulted by that rifle.
I'm triggered too.
Yeah, define
this-
assault. Assault is an action. A rifle cannot assault it. Assault is an action. You can assault with a knife. We can define a assault kitchen knife as well.
Hell,
A tactical
people with a
kitchen
spoon.
knife.
But Bruce, if I'm not mistaken, Costa Rica has very, very strict gun laws. So
Yes.
my
Yeah,
suggestion for you and David up there in Canada is look at air rifles. Lewis and Clark went across, clear back in 1803. They took Italian air rifles on the expedition across the United States. Air rifles can accomplish everything you just mentioned, just using a pneumatic system.
And 1545 were the first air rifles created too. I've done a lot of research on air rifles, and it's the Girardelli not Girardelli, that's a chocolate company, or Girardelli or something to that effect. Italians that created that, and it was actually used in warfare and had great success, other than the fact that technology was too much to make en masse at that time. And there could have been a rapid change of never ever having to use production caps, because everything would have been air rifles at that time from 1540 on. Imagine that, how warfare would be different.
We have, the three of us have a very close friend of ours. What's that, Sue?
I'm considering here in the United States because I can't afford suppressors.
Look, Sue and Rossen and I, Sue, that was a really good point with the air rifle, because the three of us have a very close friend who teaches survival. He was also a Green Beret. He wrote the survival portion of the SF survival manual, right? And if you were to ask him, hey, Randy, what are you taking with you tomorrow when all hell breaks loose? Other than knives, he's taking an air rifle. You can be very effective and very quiet, and you can buy it on the internet.
With a bike pump and an air rifle. They'll go on forever.
Pretty much, right?
And some extra canisters.
I think I'm just going to start with a 22 and a scope and fire off 500 rounds over a month or so. There's all kinds of training courses here, but I mean, anything like an AR-15 would go through the tariff system in Costa Rica. This is a pre-free trade country. It would cost 4 times, 5 times what it would cost in the U.S.
Listen,
And
you
then-
have a wife who knows the entire mountain. She'll get you one for free in a box if you ask.
I can get an AK-47 for like $300. They're everywhere here, but it's 10 years in jail just for getting caught with one, right? And it's another 5 years if you fire it, So I was thinking 22, right? Because right now, when I came over here, guys, I was a vegan for 10 years, and now I harvest all my own animals. But I can't do it anymore. I can't kill a pig with a knife and a partner working a mallet to stun it. Same thing with a goat, and I just want to simplify the process. But it also has to have a home defense value. My wife's been bugging me for some time to get a weapon.
You can also just get the pneumatic head basher thing that they have for cow systems now. Basically, it's a pneumatic pin that'll go through the top of the brain at like 200 miles an hour.
The No Country for Old Men deal.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, look, I think you can do a lot of stuff with a 22, a little bolt action 22. And there's other versions of 22 that are going to be legal, like a 22 Hornet. I've done a lot of survival with a 22 Hornet bolt action.
And some subsonic rounds, so you can have intact meat.
And so
on the 22 Hornet, no, regular. You don't have to go fancy.
So 22 home defense. I mean, I also have access to hollow point bullets at that caliber 22, so that would amp it up as a home defense. It has no recoil. It's my best weapon, by the way, is a hockey stick. Growing up,
I was going to say, look, the weapon we put a lot of emphasis on. Well, what kind of weapon do you have for home defense? And you see all the YouTubers and the Instagrammers and all that. What kind of weapon do you have? Who gives a shit? Whatever you have,
it's what you got.
Learn how to use it proper. Yeah. And that was proper English, by the way.
Yeah.
A gun still is about, you got to give it time, effort, and energy.
So people pay more attention.
If I had to live in New York City or one of those Chicago, one of those towns that don't allow me to have a gun or anything, I would go right to Home Depot or Lowe's, and I would get a nail gun, put 16 penny nails in it, and set it right by my front door. A 16 penny nail coming out at 600 feet per second does a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Not to mention 3D printing of guns is a real thing now. It's not at a low level. It's a real thing right now. And there's enough plans. There's enough plans out there that can be scanned into a 3D format all the way back from the patent office alone, all the way back to the 1900s, the original inventions of guns, where you can go back to an older style and model of guns that may not be, but it's still easily 3D printable.
And after you've used your nail gun, you can build a coffin for the assailant. So, everyone wins.
Mm-hmm. But again, owning any kind of a weapon, it doesn't make you efficient.
Right.
The most underestimated thing is actually the training. If you have the skills, actually, the actual weapon, it's less important. If you own the skill, it will be way more efficient. If people are so focused on what kind of a fancy weapon to get, and they don't pay attention about the important things. And I truly believe that the most important thing is to have a proper training.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I remember years ago, trying to use a slingshot, one of those pullback wrist rocket ones. And 30 something years later, I decided to buy myself a modern one that's got three rubber strings on it and a spring pull. And it's this high level thing. It's got a bow and arrow hook up. It's got everything hooked up. It's the ultimate in slingshot. But let me tell you something. It is a unique thing to learn how to pull it and let it to launch. And so different than when I was a little kid. And as an adult, when you're picking anything up that's a gun, you're no longer a little kid. And unfortunately, a lot of people come to guns from a little kid's movie perspective.
That's so wrong image. Such a wrong image.
That's the wrong image.
And it's
do you
dangerous.
learn? It's very dangerous. Yeah. And I was exposed to guns at a really young age, and I went to a whole bunch of gun shows. So I learned the mechanics of guns. Both brothers in the military. One brother had a federal firearms license, and we go from gun show to gun show to gun show and buy guns and then resell them in a variety of places. And this was before the assault weapons ban, where the gun shows here in Ohio were like every 5 feet you trip over one, and now you can barely find one with 150 miles of you.
Listen, mastering a firearm in general, it's a martial. It's not only a skill; it's a martial art.
Exactly.
Also, edge weapons, they're martial arts. They do not carry only the skills, but they carry the proper philosophies and values behind it. Hey, Imri is a very proficient instructor with the edge weapons as well. Again, access to the firearms, it can be difficult, but access to the edge weapons, it can be a little bit easier, and that can be even more dangerous, especially in cross proximity engagements. So, Imri, I don't know if your listeners actually will be interested if they want to get some training from Imri or for the other guys over there. So Imri.
Before you guys do that, I'm gonna jump off right now. I got a show to do, but I will watch the replay. Thanks guys for having me here.
All right, take it easy, David. We're about to end anyways. Go ahead, Imri.
Can you provide a little bit information of the school that you have? If I don't know if the listeners will be interested about that.
Yeah, well, thanks, Rossen, for shamelessly plugging me. So
I can plug
I do
anyhow.
I do teach. I do teach some knife fighting skills, mainly based on a system called Martial Blade Concepts that I studied under Michael Janich, who's the guy that created that system, who I think is a genius. And I mix that in with a lot of the other background things that I do. I agree with everything Rossen said about the martial arts, except I don't call what I teach martial arts, because art implies that that it's something that looks nice. So there's nothing sexy or fancy about what I teach, but it's effective.
Hey, for some ladies it can look nice.
I know. Hey, if it looks good, it must be good, right?
Of course.
But yeah, you want to come learn how to use some of these things. This is my new little design that's coming out. But yeah, by all means, we put our contact info. I guess I gave you guys my email to disseminate here, and you can also reach Sue and Rossen through the same email with me if you want. But well, thank you. That's my website. So I'm based out of Kentucky right now. Rossen and I are planning to potentially kind of join forces in Texas. We'll see. But we travel. So, if you guys want to put on a course somewhere near you or whatever, and you can get a bunch of people, Rossen, thanks for plugging in my skills here. But I'll tell you this, anything regarding, and I teach firearms, right? I teach firearms mainly, and tactics and CQB and, Krav Maga knife fighting. There's nobody better than Rossen on this planet to go and learn how to become proficient quickly, all things considered, quickly. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll have a conversation outside of here and hopefully get you guys trained up.
Cool.
Yeah, and I will caveat that and say Imri will put the caw in your McGraw.
Michele, do you want to give away for people to get a hold of you?
Yes, I've already put it on the web earlier on the chat.
Okay.
Did you have? Okay.
There we go.
Okay. There you go.
Are there any last words you want to say to anyone that's out there?
Well, thank you for having us and let us speak our minds when we could.
Well, you are welcome.
We appreciate everything, and it's been good synergy here.
All right, Monty, you want to give away for people to get a hold of you?
No. Way for Thin Entertainment on YouTube, Odyssey, BitChute, as well as Rumble. On Twitter, if you go into that battlefield, at Real Monty Dean, and Facebook as well. I also can be heard live on Revolution Radio Wednesdays, 2 a.m. East Coast time for the United States. And then that show's actually archived on the video channels. So if you can't hear it live because it's 2 a.m. in the morning, you can hear it that. And then when Andrew does a call-in show and he feels like a bit of a laugh at the end, he brings me on. I can be also seen on public transport and the supermarket.
And looking for your cat.
Hey, Andrew, can we plug the UFO symposium?
Yes.
Do you have,
go ahead.
that? Yeah. Y'all are invited to join us for the first annual in Vernal, Utah, the UFO Disclosure Symposium. That's another world I tick in. So,
and that will be in the end of May.
The end of May 27th through the 29th, and you can also come online. Tickets.
And what's the website for that?
The website is UFO Disclosure Symposium.
UFO Disclosure Symposium.
And
great.
When you walk in the door, there's big effigies of Rossen and Sue and I floating around because we're probably the biggest UFOs around.
Nice. All right, guys. So hold on to the screen. We're going to go to a breakout room just a second. All right, everybody. You guys know who I am. You go to my website, andrewbartzis.com. Visit me at Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, or anywhere else we are doing these broadcasts. We are out here to educate, inform, and have a laugh while doing it because life does not need to be so serious. So sit back, relax, put your tray tables in an upright position, and just enjoy reality. We will be back next Thursday for another call-in show. Take us away, Robert.
Each different bubble of reality is true.
A galactic historian is a person that looks at all the lines of dramatic karma.
Nudge, nudge. It's the Holy Grail.
Improvise. Mysterious.
It's counter psychic intelligence.
Why is DNA farming of this star cluster so important?
Because we do manifest our reality. We do create our reality.
Hello. Let's create. Let's co-create, and let's change this world with love. No matter if you're from Alpha Centauri or Earth, we all began with the same birthing process. We live in a limited point of view. Living the mystical life daily is about striving for the unlimited point of view. Each day, each human being gets an infinite amount of choices. Living the mystical life daily is about facing obstacles and challenges. The level of awareness that you are working at means you have a responsibility to be equal with it. How does one truly let go of expectation? You can make the moment that you wake up to the moment you go to sleep sacred. The keys to success: choice, 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 and choice.